Welcome to New Tracks Meetup. Thanks for coming this evening. We really do appreciate it. Hope you come back a lot and tell your friends about us. If you're new to our show, I hope you'll go to our website, newtracksmodeling.com, newtracksmodeling.com, and register at the site. And you'll receive emails of each one of the shows and the train shows that we do, and keep up with what our activities are. Our next train show, and Dylan, if you'll put up the logos for me, is January 16th and 17th of 2021 at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And we're fortunate that we have two great sponsors for our show. The Great Scale Model Train Show in Timonium, Maryland, and MRH Media, Joe Fugate's company, are both our sponsors for the train show in January, and we really do appreciate their participation. They've been an awfully big help to us. Tonight we have the My Bill segment with Chris, of course, and the next one after this is December the 23rd. So mark your calendars for that, because that'll be the next time that we donate to modelers actually coming and participating by showing what they're working on and the models that they're building. As you know, I've recently been asking for help because with all of the activities that we're getting involved with and that we're doing, we need more people. We really desperately do. And I'm proud to say that this afternoon we got another person, Jeff Vandergraff, who's an HO modeler. And Jeff, again, I really do appreciate your offer of participation. We're looking forward to your help. And I'm looking for other modelers in various scales. Jeff is an HO modeler, and he has given me manufacturers I haven't heard of before. He's given me modelers I've never heard of before. And he's given me things that we should consider for our marketing that I've never heard of before. So in one afternoon, I picked up a lot of knowledge about the HO markets that I think is going to really be important for us. And I think Jeff is going to really turn out to be an important asset to the group. I also have found an N-scaler, Chris, Robert Simmons. You may remember Robert. He's been on one of our shows. He had that extensive N-scale, very highly detailed layout that he carries around in his van, if you remember that, and puts it up at different shows when they're possible. And he responded to me. And I've got an Australian who responded to me. I've got a person in the UK who has responded to me. And I've got another N-scaler and another HO scaler who responded. And I'll be talking with them either tomorrow or Monday. And I really think that there are a lot of people out there that would like to get involved. And it's just up to us to try to reach out and find them. So we've hit the HO, we've hit the N scale right now. I'm very interested in trying to get to a G scale modeler. I'm interested in getting to an S scale modeler, an active S scale modeler, not TC and not Paul, but an active S scale modeler. That hasn't been with us before. I'd like to find an O-scale modeler. While I model in O-scale, I'm an O-scale traction guy, and there's a whole world of O-scale modeling out there that I don't really get involved with. So I'd like to be able to find somebody from that scale. I'd like to find a live steamer if we can, and I'd like to find a Z-scale if we can. And if you know of somebody or can recommend somebody in the various scales that you think can help us figure out who we really need to be talking to in those scales, who they talk to, who they look up to, who they look to for their modeling ideas, the manufacturers that they use, that most of us probably haven't heard of before. All of those things are important if we're going to really be able to reach out to the broad audience of modelers that we're trying to. So I'm actively looking for people like that. And if you know of people or can recommend people, Dylan, if you'll put up my email address, then please send me an email and contact me, and we'll go from there. or you can go to my Facebook page and send me a messenger notice. That's great, or post on my Facebook page. It's Jim Kello, MMR, and it's easy to find. Paul Thomson is next. I'd like to introduce who Paul came up with this great idea of quick tips, and he's really been very favorably received, and we get a lot of good comments about what he is talking about, which tells me that his idea, his concept of having these quick tips to try to bring things to the forefront that maybe modelers have known about, but maybe forgotten about, or if you're new to the hobby, you've never learned before, I think is really valuable. So Paul, thank you so much for coming up with the idea, and thanks for doing it in our sessions each time. So I'll turn to you, Paul.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Tonight is really going to be quick because I didn't have a lot of time, but I think this is going to be an important topic. Dylan, can I get the first picture up, please? We've got a lot of us sitting around home working on things, and one of the things I asked a lot at train shows when we were doing them with newbies was what to do with screws, how to, the whole 9 yards. And what I decided was, okay, I'll just concentrate very quickly on screwdrivers tonight. There are two things in this photograph. The top screwdriver and screw shows a nice fit. That's sitting together on its own. It's nice and snug. The bottom one, as you can see, there is a little bit of slop. It should be as close to the top one as you can get when you're putting a screw together. The other nice thing about this photograph is it shows how you should be approaching the screw with the screwdriver. Perpendicular, or in other words, in line. If you're like the bottom one on the not in line, you stand a very good chance of slipping or mangling your screw or the screwdriver. Next slide, please, Dylan. Okay, this is basically what everybody should be using if they're into HO, and this is for the newbies. All you other guys probably have your own favorites. It's just a complete selection of sizes that you never know what you're going to get at. If you're tackling a screw that's the wrong size, you may do damage. The worst of it is you can also slip off the screw and damage some nice paint jobs. Next slide, please, Dylan. This is another example of a basic tip. The screwdriver on the left has been damaged. You put that in a screw and all you're going to do is chew things up. So my tip for that is throw it out. Well, you don't need to throw it out. You can actually probably grind it down or do something else with it depending on how handy you are. Next slide, please, Dylan. And for working around the layout, etc., you might consider all kinds of nice bits. My tip here is buy the best you can and get the best finished tip you can. If the tip looks cheap and it doesn't nicely fit in a screw, it's not worth having. A good screwdriver should fit nicely and snugly, no matter what the bit size is or what the bit is. You can see there's actually three different bits here. The one may be unfamiliar to Americans, the Roberts and the square one in the middle. Anyway, next slide, please, Dylan. And for generally working around the layout, you can get yourself a nice interchangeable bit and go to Home Depot or some other outlet that sells nice premium bits, and you'll thank me every time you put that thing into a screw. If it fits, it's worth doing, and you'll save yourself a lot of time and a lot of models. If you are working on them, use the right screwdriver. Thanks, guys.
Couldn't agree more.
The only thing I would add is 2 points. Number one, when you're doing Phillips, make sure it's a Phillips screw and a Phillips bit, not a posi drive or a Japanese cross point. Second point, if you go to a place called iFixit and go to their tools, they have some of the smaller bits, not the 1/4 inch, but they're not 1/8 inch either. They're in between. But anyway, they have a whole kit. relatively inexpensively. And if you're working on locomotives and so forth a lot, with all those darn tiny little screws, you will think that you have good bits that are tiny, but also the driver is tiny, so it can get down in places that that big fat one won't get. Save you a lot of frustration having the right screwdriver.
Is that I fix and repair?
I fix it.
Yeah, I fix it and repair.
I don't know. It's ifixit.com, I think.
Oh, okay. You're on the internet because we have a store here where I live in North Carolina, which is called I Fix It and Repair.
No. This is a worldwide do-it-yourself repair place. They've got all kinds of repair guides and everything, but they also have a set of tools.
Okay. Because
Very good tools.
the store I'm talking about has multiple locations. That's why I wondered.
No, this is a internet thing.
Oh, okay.
Could I add something for a second, gentlemen?
Please.
Okay, I spent a couple of years in a machine shop learning how to work machine practices and tools and stuff, and I have a nice little collection. One of the things I learned is that even with Phillips screwdrivers, there's a number 0, a number 1, and a number 2 sizes. And a lot of times I've seen guys use the wrong size Phillips head and or Robertson head. Robertson heads are sometimes used to put together certain components in the United States, and I've seen them used to put together bathroom stalls of all things in supermarkets, like Walmart or whatever. But you can use a number 0 Phillips and a number 1 Phillips look very similar in size, but there's small differences, about 1 or 2 millimeters, that can make the difference between seating the head in the screw properly or stripping it out. And
yeah.
2 is way too big. It's made for large screws, you know.
Yeah. Number
So-
2 is made for like sheetrock screws and stuff.
Yeah, yep, or bigger.
Yeah.
And
I've seen Phillips down to 4.0.
Yep,
Really
Yep, I
tiny
have 'em.
stuff.
yep.
Like for a lot of the
Mhm.
old screwdrivers for brass locomotives for
Yep.
the side rods and stuff are 000 and 4.0. And if you
Mhm.
use too big or too small of a
Yep.
Phillips, you'll strip it.
Yep.
Same thing like the Roberts. If you're using them,
Mhm.
if you use, I've got cabinet screws that self-hide, but they use a number 0
Yep.
Roberts. And if you put that number 0 into a number 1, you'll
Yep.
strip both the head and the screwdriver.
Yep, very true.
This sounds a lot more complicated than just simple, I guess, isn't it?
Well, there's also number 3, which is kind of a blunt point one for large
Yep.
screw heads. And I know
Yeah,
too many
well-
people try to take a 2 and spin a 3, and well, what can I say?
I've seen guys use a flathead screwdriver and a Phillips head, and I'm like, okay, that's not how you're supposed to do it, but okay. You know, and then wonder why
I've
the
already
screw
done that when I was desperate. But I have
We
done
won't
that.
even get into torques or any of the other fancy stuff.
I wasn't going to show all the torque stuff and the rest of it because I wanted to keep this simple enough for the beginner as well.
Well, the only thing that I would add to what you said is make sure you have the right size.
Yeah.
And get yourself a good set of bits, both the 1/4 inch bigger stuff and the small stuff from like iFixit. Or if you don't want that big of a tool set, I think they've got the small bits at Home Depot and Lowe's now. But get good bits and use the right size.
What's that set run? Do you know, TC?
No, because it's been too many years since I bought one.
Oh, okay.
I can look it up later after my little show.
Okay, well, thank you so much, guys. There's a gentleman here tonight that I want to introduce specifically, Vincent Stephen. Vincent?
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Yeah, great. I can't see you. I think your camera's off.
Okay, I've never used this thing before, so y'all have to just bear with me. Let's see what happens.
There you go. Now
There
I
you
can
go.
see you.
Now you see how ugly I am.
Guys, the reason I want to introduce you to Vincent tonight is Vincent contacted me about the Facebook that I use, and we got to talking about various things. And Vincent and some partners of his are going to open a new hobby shop. And I found this fascinating because all we hear about these days, it seems like, is the hobby shop of old is closing down, and Vincent and his partners are getting ready to open a new hobby shop. So when Vincent and I were talking, I said, well, you know, this really interests me and I'd like to be able to follow along with you some. So he and I are talking about how that's going to happen, but I wanted to introduce you all to him tonight and give Vincent a chance to talk just briefly about what his plans are, where his group is going, so that you'll have an idea about what he's doing. And I think it's a very appropriate subject for our times. And hopefully it's going to be something that other people may want to copy around the country. Because I know when I was coming into the hobby, going to the hobby shop was one of the great events of my life. I met a lot of people, I found out a lot of information, and they really helped me a lot. Not being able to do that, I think, has been a detriment to the hobby. So Vincent, welcome to our show tonight. And if you'd like to take a few minutes and tell the group what you're up to.
Well, like Jim said, he had posted the other day that message about looking for this, that, and the other, and I thought, well, let me give him a message and see what it's all about. And after we spoke yesterday, I told him about the plans we've got. Just yesterday, we signed the letter of intent for a 5,000 square foot facility.
Wow.
Which will be a full service model train parts, all scales. I have pictures and video, but I don't know how I would upload them or whatever. But it doesn't matter. There'll be plenty of time for that. But I'm in Southwest Florida, down in the Fort Myers area, and for the last 5 years, we had a great model train shop that was owned by a couple of gentlemen that were just knowledgeable like you guys are. And let me say this right up front. I've been model railroading for nearly 40 years, but you guys have all forgotten more than I ever knew. So I'm the guy that buys it in the box, sticks it on the track, and hits go. So, but I enjoy building the layouts. I like, building the bridges and things like that. But I am no master by any stretch of the imagination. So, the name of the hobby store is going to be Calusa Trains and Hobbies, which you can't go into a hobby store nowadays and not have remote control cars and airplanes and that sort of thing. In the city that I live in Cape Coral, we have a very unique thing. We actually have an airport for remote control planes, which is great. The other thing is with the remote control cars, slot cars and things like that, which is a little off subject of what you guys are doing, but there are no slot car tracks around here, and I'm talking within 100 miles. I think Jim lives up in Ocala or Orlando or somewhere, but there might be something up there. I don't know, but there's nothing in the Southwest Florida area for this sort of thing. So much of the store will be model trains, because that's my passion. But we're also going to have an indoor RC track. If you can imagine what an in-ground pool would look like inside of a building, except it's built out of concrete, filled with sand and dirt, and sculpted to provide an area. Imagine your train layout, but it's an RC, like those monster trucks that drive around, whatever. I'm retired Army. I'm affiliated with many veterans organizations, and we've been blessed to attract some folks like Alexander Rossi. I don't know if anybody knows who that is. If you don't, then it doesn't matter. We have some local dirt tracks around here. I'm talking about race, not NASCAR, but those kind of races. So the club that we have for the RC probably has somewhere around 700 members. And they're all very excited about prospect of having a track. So we were thinking how we're going to marry our relationships with the veterans and the first responders. My wife's a 24-year deputy sheriff. She does retire in 12 months. All of these things are just coming together as far as all the different people that are going to be involved in this. So there's going to be, you know, hopefully something for everyone. Like Jim said, we all remember when we were younger, going into a hobby store and just marveling at everything. And, you know, where do you go now? If there's no mom and pop hobby shop around, Hobby Lobby has what, a 4-foot tall by a 2-foot section of model railroading stuff.
Some do, some don't have anything.
And some don't even have anything. So to, you know, for full disclosure, I mean, we do have, we do have a hobby shop, you know, in Fort Myers, but they have reduced their model railroading stuff down to probably 1%. It's all remote control car stuff. So, so it's not much help in that regard. And, you know, with the internet and that sort of thing. Now, the other thing that we're going to do is my background and, you know, all my partners' backgrounds, we're big into charities, big into real estate, big into organizations. So when we decided to do this, we said it's going to be a community hobby shop. It's not just going to be like an owner, you know, and this is how it's going to be. We want to portray it and operate it as if it were a community type situation. Now, most of you guys look pretty old, so you're going to be in bed here in a couple of hours. But guys like me, I can't sleep for shit. I'm up all night, so I can envision being down at the store, you know, at 1 o'clock in the morning with 15 of my buddies who can't sleep either, and you know, racing cars or running trains around the track or whatever it is we want to do. We, again, are blessed that here in Lehigh Acres, Florida, which is still part of Fort Myers, there's a gentleman who is probably not is, but probably was or could be again, one of the pioneers in the slot car racing world. And it being in the 187 scale, which is, you know, around the, well, which is the HO scale. And mind you, I usually say ho scale, but I didn't want to hear a bunch of crap, so I said HO. HO scale. We were thinking that as the members build the layouts and stuff like that, we would actually build the HO scale and incorporate the slot car racetrack in that, so that it's almost like you're racing for real through a town or Le Mans or what have you. We think that would be kind of cool. But we have the Lionel layouts done. We have the N scale done. We have the HO done. The S scale is done. And when I say they're done, when they shut down that hobby store, the first thing I did 6 months ago was go buy everything. So I have all of that stuff, but I don't know, like Jim said, there's not a day that doesn't go by that I haven't heard that another hobby shop somewhere in the country has shut down. I don't know that the ones that are even here now are going to survive, but you almost have to put that out of your mind. You have to say, you know what, who cares? You know, you can't take the money with you. You know what I mean? You've heard of the old cliches, but I still think communities, and we have an older community here. When I say older, you know, we all still remember what a great model railroad shop was like. And we think we can make a go of it and have a pretty good success. So, I mean, I could talk about it all day long, but if anybody has any questions, you know.
You mentioned Lionel. Are you going to deal with 2 rail O scale as well?
The set that we had, the layout that we do have is a 2 rail.
Okay.
And again, full disclosure, I'm not an expert, you know. So if you ask me 2-rail, 3-rail, traction rail, you know, ask me anything about N scale, I'll tell you everything I know about that, which is pretty good because that's what I particularly model in. So
Right, right.
yeah, I mean, I've spent a lot of time with that, learning all the DCC stuff and that's, I even put my own decoders in the other day. But the other thing I bought from the train store was the previous owners. So they'll be coming to work for us. And had they said no, I may not be even having this conversation with you because I think that the knowledge that you know this particular guy's brought with them, and they're older, you know, in their 60s. They had the shop for 5 years, and somebody came along and bought it, and then in 6 months it was out of business. That doesn't make any sense, does it? But that's what happened. So anyway, they'll be coming with us, and they bring a tremendous amount of knowledge. I mean, I don't shave because I don't have to. I mean, I'm retired. I've been retired for 22 years, so I shave whenever the hell I want. But I'm not. I'm more. How should I put it? I'm more of an organizer, more of a more financial kind of guy. But when I need legal advice, I go to a lawyer. When I need accounting advice, I go to an accountant. When I need training advice, I'm going to pick one of you guys and ask a question, you know. So you go where you need to get the information and the knowledge that you need. And the definition of a fool is the guy who thinks he knows everything. So I'm listening to the tips about the screwdrivers. I mean, who'd have thunk that at our age we'd be having a conversation about using the right size screwdriver? And every one of us have always used the wrong size screwdriver. We use the screwdriver that's sitting right there, whether it's Phillips or flathead or whatever. But I get it, and I understand you guys are down into the nitty gritty trying to build those really tiny little things. And I'll tell you a funny story. I mentioned that I'm part of a pretty big veteran and first responder organization. We actually are having a train car made for our organization from Microtrains. So the process of working with Eric over there at Microtrains was actually fun. And through the months of going through back and forth and designing and all of that, the orders in, and as a matter of fact, we pre-sold every one of them, so we don't even have, I think we have 5 left. But I'm not here to sell anything. What my story is, I mentioned that I put my first decoder in a couple of weeks ago. Well, when I was taking the cover off, I thought I had to take the couplers off and that sort of thing, and that all worked out very well. I got the decoder in. I put the cover back on the locomotive, and reached for the coupler, and man, it just exploded into like 8 pieces. And I saw all 8 pieces because I had done it on a white towel, and I'm looking at this spring, and let me look at, I mean, my finger. I'm like, no, this is not happening. So I had the instruction sheet for that actual car, and it was one of those United States of America sets. It has an A, a B, and an A. Anyway, so it had the instructions. So I went and I looked at the part number, and I'll just buy a new coupler. Well, I couldn't find it anywhere. So I sent Eric a message, and I said, man, here's a picture of the instructions, and here's the part number, and I'll be damned if I can find it anywhere. He says, oh, well, it's got a new number, and here's the new number. And he says, don't worry, I'll mail you one. So I have it in an envelope, and one of these days when I don't have anything else to do, I'm going to try to put that doggone coupler back on. And, but for you guys, that's probably, like putting your underwear on. You just do it. You just know how to do it, but if you've never done it, which, as you listen to me, I'm excited about model trains. I could take you into my train room. It's beautiful. I mean, I got double helixes. It's 4 levels, 8 main lines. I love it. And I built it from scratch. But like I said, I am no master. I am no, I don't necessarily consider myself a modeler. I mean, I'm a model train enthusiast. I lived on my motorcycle for 5 years once. Did that make me a biker? Well, I was a biker, but I got out of that because most people became what we call motorcycle enthusiasts. So, when I would be in the train store and I would see somebody walk in, at Christmas time or whatever, and they husband and wife, and I see them, buy this $129 Durango, Colorado set, for whatever it was, N scale, or it might even been HO scale, but they definitely weren't model railroaders. They were just buying a gift for their grandson, which is great for the train store, but I don't know, unless there's somebody there showing that kid how to use it and how to, appreciate it or whatever, what it's all about. It'll probably just sit in the box in the closet forever until he ends up giving it to his kid or grandkid or what have you. Now, my wife yesterday, she happened to be sitting next to me, and we were talking about the store and everything. And she says, you know what, I've got an idea. You know how they have these places that, kids, teenagers, whatever, can have birthday parties and they order pizza. She says, well, what if you were to rent out some of it, for like 3 hours at a time for kids to have a birthday party? And they could do the RC track, or they could do the model train layouts or what have you. Because we would have rentals there. If you wanted to just come in and do an RC race or whatever, we would have rentals there. So I got to thinking about it, and I said, that's a great idea, So we're going to add that to our, mix of things that we want to offer as well. It's going to end up costing me another $2,000 a month, because I'd probably want to rent another unit strictly for that. I don't really want kids eating pizza hanging over my railroad tracks or this sort of thing. So, but there's all kinds of ideas, but that's the community part of it. What does the community want? And if the community is going to support something, and mind you, we have strong, and I'm not just talking about me and my wife, I mean, the people that are involved in this, we have strong ties to our community, whether it be through City Hall all the way down to, all the rest. We know everybody, so we wanted to include everybody. So I think we're going to have a pretty good success at it. And again, 20 minutes ago, I said, if anybody has any questions, I'll certainly be glad to answer them. But I kept talking. But I'm looking at this guy, and it doesn't really have a name, but he's got a white shirt on, mustache, glasses. William Davis. You look like you got a question.
I already asked the question. I was going to ask about the O scale.
Oh, okay. Did I ever answer it?
Yeah, you answered it. You said you had
So-
two rail. So the problem with most hobby shops things nowadays is if they have any O scale at all, it's all Lionel.
Right.
So I think that's the challenge. And I think that's the thing you got to figure out as a hobby shop is how you deal with the long tail of products in the hobby. So, the challenge I see is that the diversification of product availability that we all get so excited about basically is really hard for a local hobby shop that has to carry inventory costs for a fixed footprint of modelers to carry. So in other words, the challenge that's happened here, I think this is the thing you got to figure out in the industry if you want to have local hobby shops, is if I'm a national online retailer, and we all know who they are, and I'm not in any way disparaging them as bad people, they're taking advantage of the same economic model that Amazon's taking advantage of, and now Walmart's taking advantage of everybody else is, which is there is the concept of what I need to buy locally versus what I can buy remotely. So if you stop and just think about that for a second, what are the things that would drive you to need to buy something locally? And by the way, COVID has exacerbated this whole issue, but just stop and think about it for a second. What's the first thing that say, I need to buy something locally because I need to buy it
Now,
right now? If my faucet is broken, I have to turn the water off to my house, or I flood the house and my wife can't take a shower, I'm not going to wait 2 days to get the part delivered. My marriage probably won't survive.
No.
Yeah, and I'm being funny, but there are things like that, a lot of things. So that's the first thing, something that I need to write down. The second is, and this is important in our hobby for us to think about, something you need to experience before you buy it. And so when I say experience, I can experience a lot of things through the mediums I get through my computer, through websites, through a video, through a demo video, through YouTube. But something I want to look at and I want to examine in a way, it's really interesting. We've had this discussion about the NMRA and judging models and their real concern about judging models through a photograph, video, et cetera, and that there's things you really have to see up close. I think that's true of a lot of modelers. So the interesting thing is when you take those two things out of the picture, a lot of other things, the reasons for not buying, the reasons to buy them locally go away, right? So if I'm willing to wait 2 or 3 days, if I know I need some paint for a project I'm starting now and I'm doing all of the wood graining, and I know it's going to take me a week to do the wood graining, when I get done, I need stain, I can order the stain online, because if I've got a reasonable structured plan to how I build things, I can order it just in time for when I need it on my model, because I know it's a week delivery, or from Amazon, I can get it with Prime right away. And I think the challenge for local hobby shops is how to develop a strategy to deal with that. So, by the way, so however you do it, so by the way, one of the things I do for my local hobby shop is when I want to buy something, I go look and see if I can buy it on Walther's. And then I call them and I have them put it on my order to on their order to Walther's, and then I can go get it from them. And it kind of gives me an opportunity to go in and see them and get some stuff, because they have appointments here only. But my thought is, I think you need to think through that. How do you deal with that? Because right now that long tail is becoming a problem.
Right.
Because if I'm selling online, I'm dealing with this large audience. And if 60 to 70 or 80% of the people can plan their purchases, that's my selling audience. It's the kind of the eBay versus classified ads. And the problem is that you have this inventory carrying cost versus the number of potential buyers within a physical footprint. So anyway, it's something I think, as the owners of hobby shops really need to think through. One of the things I've always thought is, wouldn't it be interesting if there was a way to share inventory in the back end?
Phil, let me add something to that subject, if you don't mind.
Cool, no worries. I just threw my.
Oh yeah, well, the gentleman that owned the other store, one of the things that I used to ask them was, why would anybody buy anything in your shop that they can buy online for, $25, $30 less? Okay. And he says, it is a problem. People come in, they touch them, they look at them, they go, oh, I like that. But then they look at the price and then they walk out. And I don't mean it's a negative, not a confrontational thing. It's just people will go in, like you said, and they want to touch something, look at it, feel it, smell it, but then they leave and never come back. And they went to Amazon or Walmart or wherever the hell they bought it from, Micro Train stuff or wherever, and paid $25 or $30 less. And what Jack told me is that because of the size of their store, they just weren't able to buy the quantities to get the pricing that would allow them to sell it for $25 or $30 less. So they're only buying like 1 or 2 engines,
right,
as opposed to 10 or what have you. So you're right. The manufacturers have put, and I'm soon to be one of those people, put us in a position where most places won't be able to afford to buy 10 engines at a time to get that next price point break, if you will. So, you know, I don't know if that, added anything new to what you were saying, but I absolutely get what you, I mean, you'd have to have everything in the store, just like Home Depot does, so that when your wife's shower breaks and you need that little washer, that little washer needs to be hanging on that peg, not have to go to the special order desk and order it and have it there in 2 days. So you're right. You have to know your customers. You have to know your base. Those people have to be invited in. You have to know what it is that they're doing. I'm telling you what we plan on doing. What is your scale? What are the types of roads that you're looking, try to know as much as you can, so that when you're buying your inventory, you're carrying the things that people are saying that they would like to have, I guess.
Um,
Yeah,
I
I
had
guess,
a train store for a while.
Say it again.
I had a train store for a while.
Okay.
The economy turned
Well,
really sour and I got killed.
hold on. I think we could probably go for 2 hours on this subject, and that wasn't my intent
Yeah.
tonight. So, Vincent, I want to thank you so much for coming.
Well,
I want to thank you so much for sharing with us what your ideas are. Vincent has an idea for us to put up the new tracks on, I don't know what it is, but TC, if you could contact Vincent and find out how we go about doing this, what it's all about. I don't understand it.
Could I give them a 1 minute roadmap, a 1 minute?
Well, I tell you what, I got so much to cover tonight, Vincent. I can't right now. But TC, if you could contact Vincent, please, and find out the details about it and let me know what we need to do.
Okay, I'll Vincent, do you know how to use the chat function?
Yeah, it's right here. I'll drop my email.
Put some contact info in there and I'll give you a call later. Probably not tonight because you're going to end up after the show. You may want to go to bed. So, because you're in Florida.
Probably not because he's a late person and an early person at the same time, TC. But I'll leave that up to you guys. Vincent,
Okay.
thanks again. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, sir.
And just for everybody's information, I'm really curious about this. I mean, I hear all the time local hobby shops can't succeed. I've heard Phil talk about it, that all hobby shops need to be aware of this and that and so forth. I understand all of that. I understand economic. I think I understand it. I may not. But I really am interested in following the process that Vincent and his partners go through in trying to establish this community-based hobby shop. I like that concept. I haven't heard anybody talk about that concept before, particularly as it relates to model railroading. So I do plan to follow this, and I plan to have Vincent back and see where we go with all of this in the future. So I want you to be aware of that, and I wanted you to meet him and hear about his plans. So Vincent, thank you so much for coming this evening. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, let's see.
We're gonna get caught up.
Well, the My Build will he was here once before.
Big Robert,
Yes.
yes.
show us what you're going to show us.
Oh, yes. Okay. A number of years ago, I went to a train show. They have a local train show here in Albany, in downtown Albany. And the funny thing is they coincided with a chocolate show right across the hall from them. So you get entire families going to this train show and it's packed to the rafters. Why? Because the wives come with the kids and the kids get into the trains with the parents. So they make a deal. The wife gets to go to the chocolate show if the father and the kids get to go to the train show because they're right across the hall from each other. Anyway, I picked up a Metro North shell. All right, O scale, no floor, no trucks, no nothing, just a shell. I bought it for like $10, $15 at the show a couple of years ago. And the thing is, I put it away and I've been meaning to do something with it because I wanted to find out if I could make a floor for it, and I figured I could. Well, I did. What I did was I took telescoping styrene and put it inside the corners where the mounts are at. And that's what's sitting on top of the original posts is the styrene telescope that I put together. The red is red paint to mark off so that when I put and make the floor, it marks the floor positions where the screws, the mounting screws will go through. So they're accurately placed, which is what happened. I also placed LED strips that I got from Amazon, believe it or not. It was like $10 or $12 for a roll of 170, 200 lights, LEDs. They're 12 volts up to 2 amps for the entire roll. And I cut the strips individually and mounted them on a strip of 60,000 styrene that I custom fitted into the roof of the car. Okay. Now the thing is, LEDs only work in one direction. They work forward, not reverse. All right. So I came up with a solution for that I found on a guy on YouTube, believe it or not. And what it was a 12 volt. I had the blade thing. It's a 12 volt rectifier. I'm sorry, 12 volt bridge rectifier. Okay. When I wire that in, the LEDs work both directions, forward and backwards. Now I still had to make a floor. So I took 80,000 styrene and cut it out to be a floor. And the trucks I ordered, luckily Atlas had 3 of them. Why they had 3 instead of 4 or 2, I don't know, but I ordered 2 of their trucks that go in the same type of car because I have 2 of these cars that are already built from them because they issue them every so often. These are Atlas commuter cars in O-scale. And the ones I have already are 2-rail, and I wanted this to be 2-rail. This didn't have a floor, so there was no way to know if it was 2-rail or 3-rail. So I took the trucks and I drilled and tapped the top of there's a piece, a bracket on the top of the truck, and I drilled and tapped it for a screw and washer to mount into the floor. And I put another washer on the top of the truck so that this whole thing would sit, when it gets put into the whole floor drilled, the drilled floor, it would sit flush just so I could put this washer and screw on top of it. I also cut this small section out because there's a tab on the truck so that when it rotates, it doesn't rotate 360 degrees all around. It has a certain degree of curves, much like any other car would do. And I never really made a floor before, so I made a brace, so to speak, a center sill underneath. This is all scratch built. And now I'm getting ready to wire it up with the bridge rectifier, and I installed a switch over here, a 2-position switch, micro switch, so that I can run it off the track power for the interior lighting, or because I normally run dead rail. And I'm going to add jumper boxes on the ends of the car to run plugs in using micro connectors from Micromark. So this, and nobody has the interior seating for these cars, so I'm probably going to have to 3D print them. Okay, the seats. So right now it won't have any seating, but it will have interior lighting and it has trucks. And it does roll very well. So that's what I've been working on. And I've been blessed with 3 hobby shops near me, brick and mortar hobby shops. One is half a mile down the street from me. And there's another one in Schenectady called Mohawk Valley Railroad Company. They have a large selection of HO and G and 3-rail. It's a large store. And there's a third one in Amsterdam about 45 minutes from me. A guy named Matt Giordano runs it. And so I've been blessed with 3 hobby shops in the immediate area, all within 20 minutes, half an hour of me, that I can go to and pick up supplies. And I go to them first because I'm a firm believer in supporting local businesses. Always have been.
You probably have more than 3 hobby shops if you go into the other hobbies. No, seriously.
Maybe.
I mean, like in my case, I have 4 hobby shops near me, but one's an airplane shop.
Yep.
And one is an RC car shop, which is a half a mile from my house.
Oh, no, these are the only hobby shops in the entire area here.
Yeah. Well, he'll order me anything I want.
Yep.
So he has no train stuff in his store, but if I want so-and-so, he'll order me evergreen styrene, or he'll order me this and that. So,
Oh, no, these 3 stores all majority of train stuff. The majority of the stock is all model trains.
Yeah, well, I have
which
an actual,
is really good.
I have an actual train shop too. Actually, 2 actual train shops.
Cool. So that's one of the things I've been working on. I have a variety of projects that I work on my own because I'm pretty much myself. But there is a guy out in Boston with the Bay State Model Museum named John Partridge. Any of you guys who have those Corgi PCC models from the way back in the day, he 3D prints interiors for those things.
I know who you're talking about. I've seen some of his work when I've been at that museum.
Yep. Yeah, I've gone there a couple of times and I talk with him all the time, him and the other guys. They're on to O-scale traction. He actually did an interior for the Boeing LRV cars as well. Does great work, So those guys are in no scale traction as well as me. Those guys, like Tony Tiuli and Charlie Pitts, those are two of my mentors that got me into O scale traction.
Yep.
Have you run into John Norrich anywhere?
Who?
John Norrich. He's the guy that for a long time, for like 20 some odd years, he ran the
Rensselaer Model Railroad Group.
Oh yes, I met him at the Albany train show a number of years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, his name
I've
is
been
John
trying to get him
Narrett.
on this show,
Yep.
but he won't do it.
Yep. There's another
Robert,
guy who does it named Jeff Stedge. He does a show over here named Jeff Stedge. He knows me. I actually met him a few times. I bought some things off of him. He does a smaller show at a Polish American hall, I believe it is over here, over in Albany. And it's pretty well attended. The shows around here get pretty well attended, really. That I have to say, up until the pandemic hit, I mean, they got pretty crowded, and a lot of them was a lot of younger families, I have to say, which to me is heartening. But as far as my own projects go, yeah, I'm very much I'm in that little niche. Being that I'm an ex-operator, retired motorman, I have a unique perspective on operations as far as a subway goes. Freight trains, not so much. Subways and rapid transit, I know. So that's what I model. I model what I know. And that's why I snapped this call up, and I also have a whole collection of subway trains, and I'm also challenging myself with my modeling skills to get better and better. But that little project right there, that's almost completely done. I took it apart just to show you guys what I've been up to with that car.
Robert,
Yes.
That's great.
have you ever heard of a company called Engineering? And
Yes.
instead of EN, it's just, you might look at some of their little bitty super micro connectors
Okay.
for your end connectors, because I know they've got stuff smaller than what Micromark has.
Oh, okay. All right. Because these connectors from Micromark are like really small. Like, I mean,
Yeah, these things, with the smallest ones from Engineering, you actually have to get a magnifying glass out if you have my eyeballs. They are tiny little things.
yeah.
There's another company out there that has them too.
Now, all the line element MTH subway trains that I have, I convert from 3-rail to 2-rail. I do my own work.
Yeah,
I
but I'm
order-
just thinking of a smaller connector that might be less obvious.
Yep. If you send me the name of the company, I'll look them up after this meeting.
I can do that.
Cool. Thank you.
I got a question for you, and this could be a long conversation, so we'll make it really simple here. You said you do dead rail. What do you use?
I used to use Blue Rail from Blue Rail Trains with Dave Fries and Pete Steinmetz. But the problem is, though, is that the first issue of the boards they made were either you could get ones for Apple, iOS, or for Android. Well, the new issuance, which allows you to use DCC boards with them and sound and everything, only works with Apple. And I only have Android. I don't have an Apple phone. And used Apple phones here go for a lot of money, $250 and up.
Wow.
Even used ones. Yeah, they go for a lot.
You got to go back to to the iPhone 4 or earlier. It takes the big wide connector. You can't update them, but they work great as an iPod, so they'll work with your, as a throttle.
Well,
or
Dave and Pete said that the Blue Rail only works well starting with the iPhone 6.
What?
Yep.
That's weird.
Well, whatever.
So I went with CVP. That's who I went with.
Yeah,
So
I've heard of those guys.
Yep, I installed my own CV. I got a CVP controller, and I installed a Lock Sound 5L DCC soundboard, and I installed a speaker. I currently have it running in a Weaver GP38 that I'm doing up for Long Island Railroad.
Yep.
And the sound I made my own brackets for the speaker that goes in the fuel tank. I mounted the DCC board and the battery and everything. I'll have to show that to you guys next time. And it runs really. And I also it was just a floor and a shell, so I installed Northwest Shortline Stanton drives under it, and they work really, really well. The train pulls 6 cars on the level track, no problem, without even breaking a sweat. And the battery lasts about 4 or 5 hours.
What was the name of the dead rail company you used?
Oh, the first one, Blue Rail. Blue Rail Trains.
No, the second one.
Oh, CVP Products.
They're in Dallas. I'll get you the contact information, Jim.
Yep.
Okay. That's C Victor, CV.
C as in Charlie, V as in Victor, P as in Paul.
I got you. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
used to,
they started out the CTC 8 and CTC 16 way back. Those articles in Model Railroader.
Yeah,
That was
yeah, I
that
remember.
company. That was
Okay.
that company. They've been in it
I-
that long.
I didn't know they were dead rail.
Oh yeah, they've got a whole. I think 3 different receivers. They did something with the QSI for a while. You could have a QSI. It had a radio on it and would talk to their stuff. You can use their controllers to talk to the Tam Valley and so forth
And NCE
on
and stuff.
only one channel, the specific channel. I forget which one.
16,
What is it?
channel 16 to interface for the Tam Valley 916 megahertz receivers.
Okay, thank you very much. But yeah, because what I was going to say was in the smaller scales, CVV, the small CVP board supposedly works in HO, but it's really too big for that. You have to go to the Tam Valley board, and the small one goes as that.
Let me go back. What was the name of the person that does the interiors for the trolleys?
Oh, John Partridge. Partridge as in bird, family. Patridge.
What's his first name?
John.
John.
Yep. They're all on a page on O Scale Traction or something like that. It's on Facebook. Because they all belong to a traction page or 2 on Facebook, these guys. Him and Tony Tuley and Charlie Pitts were all with the Bay State Model Museum.
Yeah. This is O-Scale Traction website, Facebook?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Charlie Pitts is a wealth of it. He's a treasure trove of information, really. He does a lot. He does almost museum quality work on his cars.
Yep. You're right.
Jim, as far as dead rail goes and power on board, to use the NMRA term, there's something called Dead Rail Society.
Yep.
They have a Facebook page and they have a website.
Yep. I'm on it. I'm already a member of that for a while now.
yeah, I used to live in Southern California, and a lot of those guys first started that out there with the narrow gauge stuff. And so a lot of my friends have been doing dead rail, and I really like the concept of dead rail, but I like little critters a lot, stuff like this, and so I'm not sure I could fit all that stuff in it.
There's guys who are doing N scale with dead rail.
Yeah.
Without a follow car.
No, they have a follow car for the battery.
Yeah.
Actually, I can do in scale without a follow car, but I have to use really small decoders and Tam Valley's. I have to cut it up to make it all fit.
Yeah.
Who would be a good person to come on our show and talk about dead rail? And you don't have to. We don't have to take time now to answer that.
Pete Steinmetz. I'll get you his contact information.
I've tried him. He wasn't interested. So come up with somebody else.
He wasn't interested. I'll think on it. Let me talk to a couple guys. I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
All right. If we're ready, we'll go on and get to Bob now that we have screen share back.
Okay. All right. I'll make this one quick. I want to do this one here. And I want to go here. Is that what I'm going to do? Come on. There you go. Now, this is a HO scale bar mills kit. I did the walls with a warm white acrylic paint and then brushed it. And I was leaning over to get something and accidentally put my palm right here. But I left the coloring in there, for the weathering effect. And they came with these bricks. I painted them gray first, and I didn't like them, so I painted them red. And no matter what color I used, it didn't look right. So I built my own, this one here for the dock. And the roof is done in pan pastel chalks. And you don't generally touch the models after you built them, so it's messy when your fingers are playing, like putting them together originally, but it goes pretty good. There's a grass that goes on there. Now this building here, this is something for people waiting on them, I want to pay attention. Laser cutting, when the lasers cut through here, they burn the wood. And one thing I did not consider was when they burn through the wood, this, like the non-burnt part, will soak in the stain or whatever you're using, but the burnt one will not. So what happened, it warped like crazy. So I had to build each piece individually and brace it as I did. It took me about a week to build that thing. There's a diorama there now. And yeah, that's it.
Nice job.
Busy roof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's real nice, Bob.
Very nice.
Very nice. Thanks for sharing.
So even
there it is
the
there.
burnt part, even if you sand it down, it still won't take stain. That burn just blocks it.
It'll take stain if you sand. If you sand it, it'll take
realize that at the
stain.
time, and you'd have to. And the warp was so warped at the time. If I had thought about it originally, I could have sanded it down, as you said, but I didn't. And it was so warped that I had to cut it apart and build it each piece individually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that's one of the things that I'm looking into with when I design a kit is I have some of that stuff show, and it's like, well, is that something that you could really paint and get away with, or is that something you need to stain, or something you just need to hide? So
Painting
You know,
would be okay.
Something I've done with a situation like that is I've sprayed it like with, Tamiya makes a wood deck tan color. And I've actually sprayed the pieces with the wood deck tan color, let them dry, and then stained on top of that, and it comes out just fine.
Fine with a paint covering first. Yeah, definitely. I didn't think of it though, but that's when you think, that's what you learn.
Yeah, well, I learned that the way you're going to learn it. Do a model up first before you find out the easy way to fix it.
Right on.
Bob, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Who put that heavy lumber in the top? I'd fire him on the spot.
It's amazing how much wood it takes to put the little like those stacks. It's amazing how much wood it does take. I didn't pay attention to that. I never played with wood that like a lumber yard or like that, so I didn't know.
That's the stuff they only use every 6 to 8 months.
Yeah. Now I'm going to have to take all apart and do it again.
The crap
Who carry the 55-gallon drums up to the roof?
Yeah, a bunch of them.
Oh, don't put the tar paper rolls on the second shelf either.
Now, you notice that when you go to Lowe's or Home Depot, that stuff's all at the bottom.
There's a reason for that.
All right. So if we're finished looking at Bob's stuff, how about if we move on to Clark?
Is that the Canadian?
Yeah. Mine's a good half hour.
Cut it in half.
I can scan through it fairly quickly, I guess. And let's go to screen share. What I was working on the other day was a little couple of white metal kits. Now, can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I have, most of you know, I dabble in all scales. So I love playing around at different scales because I'm a builder. So I built one in N scale, a little, what a lot of people call them a scraper. Some people call them a pan. And then I built a older Best 60 bulldozer, which was made by Rio Grande. So we'll go through this. So one of the first things, a fellow who taught me about white metal kits is a guy named Al Booz out of San Antonio, Texas. This guy knows more about white metal kits than anybody I know, maybe other than the owner of Rio Grande Models. Anyway, one of the things you want to do a first white metal kit, you want to look at it and look at the basic plans and so forth and review the parts. So a little bit of planning goes a long way with the white metal kits. One, you want to maybe decide what vehicle you want. I won't get into too much of that then. So scale, era, and location, family resemblance, that's all important when you start to build different buildings and vehicles in this case. And don't handcuff yourself by choices. A lot of people get too hung up on, well, is it exactly my era or is that out of my era or whatever. You want to develop a little bit of an engineering plan and build most metal kits you want to build in subsections. And as Red Green said, I don't know if you guys have ever watched Red Green. He once said, I took engineering, but I didn't take all of it. And that applies to model railroading very well. So the prototype, I happened to catch this at the, just off the road from the Golden Narrow Gauge Museum. This Best 60 was sitting right there, and I went, oh my God, I got to take a picture of that. So I did, and that's what a Best 60 looks like, and they're still in operation today, even though they're quite old.
So, 1920s.
Something like that, yeah. So you want to look at the parts. There's the model on the top. That one's an HO1, and the little kits that come with it. Sprues, as most people know, they're a molded framework, which the parts are attached to, and you want to take off the parts from the sprue. Now, in the N scale, GHQ makes a lot of neat stuff. They make this scraper or a pan, and boy, it goes together really well if you're want to model some stuff in N scale. They've got quite a selection, and it came out rather well. So I use ACC to put them together, and some accelerator. The biggest thing I can tell you, you can use a little applicator for the accelerator. I don't use that big spray thing that comes with them. Bending or straightening white metal is possible, but boy, you got to be gentle. And you can only do it once. If you try and overbend it and then bend it back, you'll have two pieces. Remember, always measure twice or my friend Bob goes to work. As I said before, using a sharp X-Acto knife. Now, this is one of those cases where you want to use a sharp X-Acto knife for some, and you actually want to use the back of the knife for some of the parting lines and so forth. You got to clean off all the flash. Some of these metal kits are pretty bad. Some are very good. The biggest thing, you got to dry fit the parts several times to make sure that they will mate. And the biggest thing is you got to clean that metal surface. You take a little emery cloth or a model file, and file that so it's perfectly shiny. If it's not shiny, it's not clean enough. And when you go to assemble it, it just won't stick. It's got to be that bright, shiny, shiny, shiny metal. And even if you put it down for 4 or 5 minutes, it will oxidize enough that it won't stick. So make sure you just keep that clean. So construction for this little N-scale project was pretty simple. We're cleaning off all the flash. You know, in N-scale, you got to watch for flashes to parts. Make sure you don't remove parts. So, you know, flash is just thin ridges of pieces on surfaces that is left over from the injection molding process. The tires, you want to make sure you get in the grooves. You can see on the right-hand picture, I'm using the knife backwards because you don't want to cut it. You want to be able to use it as a scraper. And one of the greatest things you can buy yourself is a fish sharpening file that has an edge to it. It's not flat on the edge, and they're triangular shaped. Tim Wares at Fast Track sells them on his site, and they are fantastic. And these things are razor sharp, and they are excellent for doing this type of work. A draft angle, everybody knows what a draft angle is. It's an angle that is built into the mold in order for the parts to be taken out of the mold. If not, if they were perfectly square, the part would never come out of the mold. They're actually built in a small angle. So you got to make sure you remove all the slight draft angle and make sure all the parts are nice and square. and that you have a good fit between the parts. Wash white metal in household vinegar. You don't have to use anything stronger. You don't have to use anything more caustic or anything. If you just let them sit in the household vinegar for a little bit, take a toothbrush, give them a good wipe, and then let them dry on their own. And I try and do this after I've taken all the flash off, after I've handled them all with my fingers and my. And then you got a bunch of parts in the end scale pieces. You got the doors, you got the roof, and you're going to start to assemble them by just gluing them in. And make sure they're all nice and square. And then the hitch goes in, and it's all movable actually on this kit. And then you can put in the little details such as the stacks, the seat, the air filters, and then the pan itself. You can adjust the scraper actually where it goes, and you have to sometimes cut off pieces just to soft. The white metal is pretty soft, so you can do that. And you don't want to use a big, you don't want to use an X-Acto blade on that, because you put too much pressure on it, can slip, cut yourself. So use something just such a diagonal cutters to make that little cut.
Hey, can everybody who's not presenting go on mute, please? If you're not muted and you're doing something, it's coming through.
So as the pan
Jeff,
goes,
specifically, yeah, Jeff, can you mute, please? Thank you.
So as
if I can find it, I'm on my phone, so I can't even find mute.
Hold on, let me do it.
So as the pan goes together, you just glue it up and kind of, again, test fit it to see if it all fit. And then we go to the paint booth, and the mixture I use for like a cat yellow is like, I think it's 2 parts UP yellow to 1 part Santa Fe orange. It's been a while, and I even spray the tires and everything because I want to do the centers. So, and once the basic model is painted, you can add some little bit of weathering and assemble it. So in the HO one, this is an HO one. You can also get these in S and O. I have one in S, and I actually have one in O as well. And they go together. This is that best tractor that you first saw. And the biggest thing here is getting the frame square. You have to really make sure that the frame is square and solid. Again, you start to add the different components onto the engine, and the engine is separate to the main piece. So as you add that one in, and the crawlers, now you can see where I've scratched the one side a little bit because there was a piece on there, and I really had to scratch it. And all the holes of the first tractor wheel there were all filled in, and I had to clean those out. So it's one of those kind of tedious, slow jobs, but if you spend time on it, it's well worth it. Then you start to assemble it. I got the tracks on, and I've got the motor in. Now, the biggest thing with this is you don't want to see how in this picture you got the motor sort of off center, and it kind of really ruins the look of the model. So you want to make sure it's centered. And again, I'm using thick ACC, not the thin stuff. I will tell you a story. I did a clinic on this, and we had 40 guys building this, and one guy absolutely refused to use the thick stuff. He said he only uses the thin, and that's all he's ever going to use. And I said, fine. And at the end of before he could sort of paint this piece, I had to literally cut it off his hand because it was glued on. Again, now you can see I've straightened up the motor so it's straight, and I've got the pieces reasonably square to the frame, and I've got the back hitch placed on. Again, here I'm putting on the other piece of the exhaust system and so forth. And there's the fuel filter. And now I've got that bar up front, or as they used to call it, part of the headache bar. And I've got the seat installed and the control instruments as well as the tank. One of the nice things you can use is use a small file, card. And when you're painting these, when you're doing sort of two different colors, and you can use two-sided tape and keep them on, it's a lot easier to spray them on that than try and find them later. Here's the plow system with the headache bar, and those nails are actually the pins for the plow so it can pivot. And here we got the back part of the headache bar on, and we're gonna install the plow. Just put it all together. You want to kind of clean it up, and this one was probably the trickiest part, because the parts are so thin, and you really got to be careful if you start to bend them and so forth. Now here it is, just dry fit. I've got the true bar across on the top now. You can see why they call it the headache bar, because if you got up improperly from the seat, you would hit the bar. And then you want to just add some details. Whenever using small drill bits, rub them with beeswax. One, they'll stay a lot sharper, and it makes the drilling easier because the material, as it comes up the floats of the drill, will make it a lot easier to extract. And you want to just drill a little bit, back off, drill a little bit, back off. And don't forget, an airbrush is a miniature spray paint sprayer, so make sure you use the correct variable as far as paint and pressure and volume, so you produce a atomized spray. And that's kind of what it looks like there. You can see I've added some brass. It's not a very good close-up picture, but you can see where I've added the brass control handles for the plow, and I've painted them, in this case, the yellow with just a little sprig of black paint on the ends to look like a leather handle. And what I did, I don't know if I got, nope, I don't. On the tread part, what I did was I took a fiberglass brush eraser, and I took off the paint to get down back to the metal, and then I rusted it up, because there would be no paint on those treads, where of course it's grinding against the dirt and so forth. It would wear off. And same thing with the front of the plow. It's mostly, there's a little paint, a little bit of rust and so forth. So that's kind of a little white metal kit that you can try. Most white metal kits go together the same way. And I have this, actually I made probably about 4 of these in the last little while. One is on my friend Tim Ware's Bronx Terminal. If you've never seen the Bronx Terminal, I suggest you go to his webpage called the Bronx Terminal and have a look at his layout. It's unbelievable. And I have one on a flat car as a flat car load, and I have another one in a cement plant that's supposedly working. So they're great little kits, a lot of detail to them. Probably a fun, full day or 2 evening project for most people. So I hope you enjoyed that.
Clark, who makes the kit?
That particular one is Rio Grande Models, which is now no longer Eric Bracker was the guy, and he no longer, he kind of retired. There are kits around. I've seen them in hobby shops that have some a good collection of white metal stuff, and you'll see them at flea markets once in a while. The blade is a separate kit, so you have to look for the blade as well. I think I've got, Now, GHQ makes another bulldozer as well. It is a smaller dozer, if I remember, and I have built it, and it's not too bad. I don't quite think they got the detail in some of in N scale. They're fantastic as far as I'm concerned, but in HO and bigger, I don't quite think they have the detail as the Rio Grande models. But again, Rio Grande models, the gentleman is retired, so.
Actually, Rio Grande just got sold to a new owner.
Yes, I was talking to some guy in California who was saying that at first he wasn't going to do it, from what I understand, because he felt that was his lifelong work and he wasn't going to give it to somebody. But I think for the good of the hobby, he may have had a change of heart. And
I think somebody talked him into it. Also, in
Who bought it, TC?
I don't know.
The word
I've only
isn't
heard
out
that
yet.
it got bought. I can look up the information.
I didn't think the word was out to you yet.
There's only been word that it's been bought. I don't have the new owner's name.
Right.
Also, in 1 to 48, there is some models that are also produced in 1 to 35. One of them is a Russian tractor, which happens to be an exact copy of a Best 60. Well, Caterpillar 60.
Yes, and I know that model, and I can't remember what it is.
I've got it in 1 to 35.
Yeah.
And it has a gazillion parts.
Yes.
There is no lack of detail on that model, but they do make it in 1 to 48 also, but I have not seen one.
So if anybody has any questions on those, I'm here. Okay, good, great, thanks.
So Clark, that was a metric half hour, right?
That's right. Well, I really went through it pretty quick, so.
It's imperial and Canadian dollars.
That's right. You were talking about Robert was talking about that burn on laser marks. When I was toying with the idea of building laser kits, here's one here. And when I teach the thing, that's one of the things you really do have to watch is that burn mark from the laser. And the other big thing, Art at Bar Mills is very, very good at this stuff. They understand, but also the grain. When you go, it's amazing how people in the cheaper kits, they just cut the structure out. They don't look at how the grain is running. And sometimes you cannot cut the ends to the sides because the grain is not running the same way.
Right, the grain, they cut it out, and whoever they bought the plywood from, it's not square. The grain isn't square between the layers and all kinds of other stuff. You really got to watch that.
But even when you go to stain it, when you go to stain the front, you will see that it's at 90 degrees or something. And well, that's one of the things we learned as I was developing these little kits for our program. But I designed probably 5 or 6 little buildings that I was going to produce. But because I have so many friends that are kit producers, I just didn't want to go into business against them. And you know, I looked at it as just a fun hobby. And that's not the way you have to look at this stuff. You have to really look at it as a business. So that's one thing you really have to do. It's like the gentleman with the hobby shop. I have started hobby shops. I have worked in some of the top hobby shops in Canada. The biggest one I worked for just after I retired, and you have to treat it like a business. There is no such thing as a community hobby shop. It just won't survive.
Can I butt in, Chris, with mine, or do you have somebody else?
No, go. Sorry, Chris, I'm out.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, we just need to make sure Clark was good. I know Bill and a few other people had thrown stuff in there. So I guess, yeah, we do have time. Well, I've got to get the kids in bed here shortly. So, Bill, are you ready, or you want to give it to TC, or?
Either way, I don't care.
Okay.
Which way you want to do it? Mine's not gonna be that long.
Okay.
Well,
What's your thought there, TC?
Either way, I just don't want to wait till 10 o'clock at night to do mine. I don't know how long-winded Bill's going to be.
I'll try to keep it short.
All right.
All right. So I need to share a screen.
Should be working.
Yep, should be still
Okay.
enabled.
All right. Maybe. Oh, there it is. Okay.
There's your computer desktop.
Yep.
It's awfully smoky in here.
He's on back.
All right. So one of my, as you know, I write a column for O-Scale Trains, and this is my latest project for the column. Let me go to view here, slideshow. And so a few years ago, a friend of mine gave me a resin body to super detail. Actually gave me two of them, one to do for him and one to do for me. Unfortunately, he passed away before I ever got them done. But so anyway, this is the one that I've been working on. I've been writing articles about it. This started off as a solid resin body kit. Let's see what's going to happen here. Oh, wrong thing. Just a minute, guys. So anyway, as you can see, this is what it started off looking like. It was not a very good body to work with. Tremendous things are wrong and incorrect for the kind of car it's supposed to be and things. So I went about converting it. So here are some pictures of what I've done to do some of the conversions on it. This is the underframe. I had to carve out some of the, everything was cast as solid. Like these are I-beams. You see across there, the white pieces are I-beams or channels. Nothing had any detail whatsoever. So I had to carve those things out and add detail. And then I had to string all the brake hardware in there, which is correct for what should be done. A little tricky drilling out and milling out that center sill in place to put the brake levers through and the piping through and stuff, but I was able to get that done. This is what it looks like on the side of the end now. You can see there's quite a bit of difference from that very first picture I showed you. Some of the rivets are decals, some are actual Tichy rivets. There's just a lot of added piece. I had to do a lot of modifying, like the angle braces weren't even on the car in the original model. This is O-Scale, by the way, too. So this is the side view of it.
Did you use actual rivets or Archer rivets?
The rivets are both. There are actual rivets on the car here, and the black ones are actually micro mark rivets. So these are running these pictures pretty quick. This is the end of the car here. Since I don't use like KD couplers or anything like this, I'm not an operator. I'm a model builder, and so I will have scale couplers on it. I will have so I built the correct coupler pocket and added all the details accordingly. Building those ladders was a real trick. The ladders are real unique on this car. One side is an angle, but the other side is just a strip that they had up there, and then they had all these drop type grab irons built into them. So this guy is this is for Dylan. This guy is in San Diego, and as you guys know, I built one of the junkyard dog kits that Dylan put out, which is absolutely awesome kit. But not being one to leave things alone, I found this picture, so I decided I wanted to build a standard gauge version of it. And so I ordered another kit from Dylan, and I created. This is how far I've gotten on it anyway at this point. This is the body. I ended up using the frame pieces and the hood pieces and the decking, and the rest of it is pretty much scratch built. The cab is all scratch built. But once again, these are decal rivets on it, and it's decal louvers, which I'm not sure how they're going to work out or not, but they're decal louvers. I might have to double layer the decal louvers on there to get them thick enough. We'll have to see. I guess I'll learn that when I spray primer on it.
Yeah, I've never used the louvers either, but
Yeah.
that looks like a neat idea.
Yeah, I didn't know how to actually do them. I'm not very good at carving out louvers and stuff like this. So I ended up scratch building the entire cab. But getting the roof to have the profile like that was quite a trick. I had to do a lot of strips underneath there to kind of work its way around, and then cover it with some 10,000 styrene. These things. So finally, the rest of the kit, I had to do something with the rest of the kit, and didn't know really what quite to do with it. So I decided to see if I could freelance a little critter. So I came up with this. This is basically the side frames from Dylan's kit, and the ends from Dylan's kit, and the doors and the cab, which I cut down, and everything else is pretty much scratch built on it. And so that's
looks like a Davenport.
Yeah, it's kind of got a little bit of Davenport in it, a little bit of Porter in it, a little bit of everything. It's a Davis port.
Oh, okay.
or a Bill port, one or the other. But yeah, so it's pretty much freelance. But I went through some critter pictures and found some things, and so I kind of gleaned what I liked out of different things. Also on the decking, that pattern on there, that's decal. So it's gonna be interesting to see how that comes out too. And that's pretty much it. That's what I got to offer tonight. So what do you think, Dylan?
I personally think it's excellent, and I think you should take copious detailed notes so I can recreate, so I can replicate this myself.
Not a problem. I can fix you up with that. No problem.
Excellent.
Okay.
Yes, and then I can do one in S.
There you go.
Only I won't have any of Dylan's parts. I'll have to do it all from scratch.
I'll have to figure out what I need to basically design in CAD, which is what I need, and what parts I can reuse, and it is what it is.
Well, I took your cab and cut like about 1/8 of an inch out of your cab to get it down to the same height and then the hood. And as you see, I extended the hood up higher too. So I kind of want to get that. It's got a little bit of like a GE 70 ton in it. Like I said, with a little bit of Davenport and a little bit of everything.
Well, that high hood is why I thought Davenport.
Yeah, yeah. And that is very Davenport lookish. It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the nightmares was doing the individual strips to make the radiator grill.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a cool looking set of shutters.
Yeah. Well, it was a challenge doing them, I'll tell you. Anyway, so I'll pass this on to TC. That's pretty much all I have to serve you guys.
Anybody else, Chris, on your list?
TC, were you talking to me?
Yeah. Anybody else on your list?
Well, we had Jim and Greg, but I think they were backups in case we were running low. So
TC, go ahead.
Yeah, all right here. I'm going to share. I need you to unshare there, Bill.
Okay, I'm working on that. Let's see.
Up at the top.
Stop sharing. Yeah, I got it. I had to get everything off the screen so I could see it.
All righty here. So somewhere I have a screen here, a slideshow. There she is. And I'll make it go back and play. This is my little 15-minute short section, we hope. What is an Arduino? I've heard this question a million times, especially from Jim. He says, what are you talking about? Well, we're not talking about that. That happens to be a Raspberry Pi. Now, that's a Model 4. It's got lots of fancy stuff on it. But basically, a Raspberry Pi or anything else, you hear about single board computers. They're actual computers. You've got where's my mouse? It's in there somewhere. You've got the USB ports, a network port, HDMI ports. It is a computer. It's very tiny. It's not as fast as the new M1 chip, but it is an ARM chip. Most of them run Linux. This can also run a version of Windows. This is an Arduino. You didn't even say so. You have a USB plug on here, but it's not the flat kind like it's on your computer. It's the square one like it's on your printer. And this long chip right in the center, that's the brain. It's a microcontroller. It's not a computer chip. So it's not like the CPU in your computer. It's very specialized. And you've got timers and you've got a couple rows of pins and everything else, power supply, etc. Comes in every flavor you can think of. The little round one is actually designed to be sewed into clothing. And one of these on here somewhere actually has an ARM chip and is kind of like a computer almost. But we're going to talk about these. These are the three sizes people use. The big one here, called an Uno, can even be used to make a DCC stubs box. I'll talk about that one day. And the other sizes do different things. They have different amounts of pins or different, you know, they might have Wi-Fi on them or they might not, etc. This is various boards. These don't run by themselves. They're called shields. They plug into the Arduino. So they have pass-throughs on them, some of them are standard. Or they might have a screen, so you want to use that on top because you can do this. Now, specifically, this is interesting to model railroaders. This shield is called a motor shield. Now, I have a little different one I'll show you later. And there's more powerful ones. This is all open source, very simple. If you want to take and use one to make a DCC system for your layout, use your phone or the new TCS thing to control trains, it's all been done for you. You don't have to program it. You download the script. You use a little program called Etcher, and you put that on a little card, plug it in underneath, and now it's a DCC thing. You don't want to use it for that. You want to go back and use one of the smaller ones that control a bunch of servos to throw the switches in your yard. Well, you use something similar to this and so forth, and all those pins, and you can throw a bunch of switches. A lot of this has already been programmed by other people. The professor, a guy in Australia, can, you know, he's got all kinds of schematics and sketches and programming tricks, and it's all open source. The boards are open source. Somebody says, well, you know, they want to buy the cheaper clone boards. Doesn't matter, they're all the same, because the Arduino company does not copyright their designs. It's all open source. And there has to be questions. Throw them at me. Maybe I didn't.
Is that the end of your presentation?
That is my whole presentation, but I have another, what, 10 minutes? So,
Okay, so TC, why do you want to stack them?
Well, if you got your basic Arduino, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the microcontroller with the pinouts. All you've got on there is a bunch of pins on the side. Yeah, you can, if you're a computer whiz, you might can do something with that. But if you
can I answer? It's a bus extension. Think about it as a vertical bus extension.
Well,
so if you think about your PC, wait, let me explain. If you think about your PC where you plug cards into those plug-in connectors, think about those as being arranged vertically. So each card plugs into the one below, and then it carries up pins that have the same connectors. So as you, if you go back, go back, TC, because it's really important to understand. Each card can be separately addressed and add functionality, right? So exactly. So it's a layering thing of functionality. That's what makes it really powerful. And the Arduino is a great I/O system. By the way, if you haven't looked at it, go look at model railroad control systems at the CP nodes stuff that Seth Newman built, because he really took advantage of this to build a bunch of cards. But yeah, if you go back to the stacked one, your picture of the stacking, your slide 8. So if you if you look at each card, you'll notice those pins go all the way up through. And so the addressing on those can work on each card on each level to add functionality. So you can basically choose to, for example, if you're building a sawmill, you can have a sound card and you can have a card controlling a servo motor to move the system for the sawmill back and forth, and you can match that with the sound. So it goes when it goes this way, and then it runs back, there's no sound. So it actually kind of makes the sawmill look very realistic. So those are the kind of things you can do by layering. Anyway, sorry for taking over. I didn't mean to take over. I do that all the time.
So Phil, just to make it, so, back in the day when we had towers, it's the same principle as that then, right?
Right, exactly. Right. It's just a, and the best thing about Arduino is it's an IO engine.
Right.
Like if you go look at the CPU stuff that Seth's done, I think he's running 128, CMRI pins. So the same as the Chubb, where you can output, and one pin can run one LED and a signal. He's running 120 of the 80 of those off a single Arduino. So it's a high output versus Raspberry Pi, which is more rich programming and screens and that kind of stuff.
Can I ask a question here, just to keep it simple, where I may understand? Phil, what is I/O? What is I/O?
I/O is inputs and outputs. So for a computer, it can think about a computer as being able to do a few things.
No.
Wait, stop. So the computer can input and output. It can run this big screen we all see, but it can also take a pin and either put voltage on that pin, which can turn a light on, or it can sense that pin. So if you turn a switch, it knows the switch got pinned. So when we say I/O, that's input and output. The input is generally a switch. Now, it doesn't need to be a physical switch. It can be, a number of things. It can be the output off of a turnout control. It can be an output off of a detector on a block. And so those become inputs. The outputs are like controlling a turnout. So you can control a turnout and say, I want to make this turnout control automatic. Or an output can be on a signal turning on the red, green, or yellow lights on a signal, on a spotlight signal. So basically inputs and outputs are those physical controls between a computer and the real world. And they're on or off on a wire.
You're breaking up, Phil. Let's break it down.
Sorry.
You've got pins down here that are called input pins. You got pins out here that are called I/O. They can be input or output. This is sensing physical things. So you close a switch or whatever. This up here is sensing. You go over a piece of track and hit and trip the sensor in detection. Okay. But it can also be output. Now there's a board. I don't know if they show it here. They don't. But like this one, you get all these relays. These are electronic relays, not the big plastic cases we're used to. And each one of them's going out to a motor or a servo or something. There's one of these daughter boards, let's call them, that you plug it into here. And it's nothing but rows of input and output pins. Hundreds.
Can I stop you and ask you a question?
That's what it's for. Go ahead.
I want to turn on a light.
Okay.
That's all I want to do. How do I do that with this piece of equipment?
The sketch. You tell it that if.
No. What do I do physically? I want to turn on a light in a building.
You want to? Oh, you're talking about a model building.
Yeah.
Okay. I wouldn't use this board. I'd use a smaller one, but basically it's the same thing. What I do is I put a wire inside one of these holes right here.
Where?
This top row, you see this? You see my mouse moving?
Oh, yeah, okay,
Those are little holes.
okay.
So I put a wire in one of them. All right.
That goes to the, that goes to the light, right?
Goes to the positive of the light, and then I ground it, which eventually comes back to here, but it doesn't have to. All I'm doing is
Wait a minute.
Yep.
I put the positive side of the light up at the top
No.
in one of those holes.
Whatever the power is, whether it's positive, whatever's not ground.
Where do I put the ground, TC?
The ground goes to the common ground that's part of that eventually comes back to here through this power supply input.
So where do I hook it up?
Okay, you got a wall wart. Everybody know what a wall wart is?
On the bottom in the center, there are two pins called ground pins. Look in the, those are where those ground pins are where all the grounds connect up.
All I want to know is, oh, hold on.
Okay. This here is the brain. So I'm gonna underneath it, there's a connector you can't see where I put a little card, like a camera card. It's got instructions written on it. Okay. And it
where do I get this card from, TC?
Walmart.
I'm sorry?
It's just a micro SD card. Go down to Walmart and buy one. It doesn't matter where it comes from.
I'm trying to find out, TC. I just put a blank card in there. Is that what you're saying?
No. You have to, I'll get to that. The port for the card is here. On the card is instructions. The instructions you've written. You tell it, I want pin 7 to turn this light on. Okay?
Where do I do that?
On your computer.
So I have a program on my computer, right?
Right.
Okay. Where do I get that program from?
According to which one you use, let's just stick with the standards. You're going to buy our whatever. I mean, if you want to get real expensive, but free ones can be had from Arduino. What is it? .cc, I think. Anyway, just look up Arduino programming on your Google and you'll get a huge list. You load one of them, you install it, and it gives you a place to type. And you just type in what you want it to do.
So which one do I get? I mean,
it doesn't matter. They all do the same thing.
So any Arduino computer program works for this.
Any of the programming interface programs that you can download from Arduino's own website, and you can download it off of all kinds of places. I mean, be careful because you're like anything else you download. But you just, I mean, that's what is an Arduino. I wasn't going to get into a lot of the how do you use it, okay? Because that is the what kind of car do I want question.
I'm trying to figure out what it does. I don't understand. I don't understand as a model railroader. I don't understand what I can do with what you're talking about.
Okay. Let me jump in here real quick.
I have a whole video that will show exactly what you want to do if you share screen.
Go ahead. Because I was going to get into other parts of it. Then I was thinking tonight was going to be more about the mechanics, not the use.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, watch.
You didn't optimize for video, Clark. We can't hear a thing.
There is no sound.
Okay.
So what's happening? The 3 sign lights came on. The inside lights came on. Some are changing colors. And then as the light comes up, it automatically senses the light and it turns everything off.
And one of these Arduinos does all that.
That is correct.
Clark, how difficult is it to program the Arduino on a computer to get that done?
Well, I knew nothing about Arduinos in July, and I can do that one now myself. There is a great tutorial if you know nothing about it. It's called Phil McQuarter. You watch his beginner tutorial. He'll just show you how to blink a LED. All right. And once you see that done, then you understand the basics. And once you understand that, you can start adding on. Now, TC will probably tell you, if you go and search traffic lights, let's say you want to build a traffic light for your railroad and have it go through the progressions, red, green, yellow, right? There are lots of guys who have already written the code. And basically all you have to do is copy the code. There in Arduino, there is a program that writes your sketches. Your sketches is the instruction booklet that's downloaded to the Arduino. So you copy this sketch or the instructions and you put it onto the Arduino page and you say, upload it to my Arduino.
And that's that little thing that TC talked about.
That's that new thing that TC was saying.
Okay.
Now, in a lot of times in the sketches or in the program, they will have a wiring diagram. So what you do, you plug one leg of the LED into pin 13 and the other pin to ground, okay? And if you can just follow a little bit of a simple schematic, and then you can attach a battery to these things to power them, all of a sudden it comes to life, and it will just keep going, just repeating that program as long as you want.
Yeah, and you can put like he did there. You can put a sensor on it so that when you turn on the room lights, well, the Arduino thinks it's daylight, so it turns off all the little model lights. You turn off the layout lights, and because it's all the little sensor on it.
The other thing you can do is you can put a bus, because remember, it can have an input sensor. So you can take an Arduino that's got a little program for lights, and you can put an input, and when the input is input, it triggers the program.
Right.
So you can now, if you have 2 or 3 of those triggers, you can put things on different cycles and turn them on and start triggering them to run their programs. The programs run for like half an hour or however long they run. You can run them that way. And then if you clear them again, you can actually turn them off or restart them. So you can actually think about a bus architecture with the distribution of Arduino. So they're really simple. It's literally just 12 volts you bring up and down that signals to them that they need to start doing something.
There's actually, if you get the little minis, not these that I'm showing here. I'm not taking over the screen maybe. Okay. So like, that's my Arduino. You see all those yellow and red? Those are more outputs. This is a clone. This isn't an actual one. And this is my little shield. See the pins on the bottom? Plugs right in. My eyesight's not that good. And then if I press that together, that's a complete DCC box. But if I decide I want to put a different, instead of a motor driver, I want a shield with servos, now I can control all the signal arms on all my street crossings on my layout. They go up, they go down, according to the sensor inputs.
But it's like anything. You have to start, and in Arduino, they have this thing called the blinking light. And honestly,
it's like hello world.
You start off with the blinking light. And then as you learn the programming and so forth, you can expand it. Now, a lot of people, even myself, I'm not a great programmer. I can do it, but I have a railroad to build. I'm impatient that way. So I will go out and look for people who have already done this crap, and I will take their sketch, and hopefully they have a schematic to go with it, and then I will just copy theirs. But
now, what you're calling their sketch,
yes,
is they've written the software.
That is correct.
They
So
read the instruction set. What are you showing? Oh, yeah. These guys are really nice. They've got a lot of stuff. There's another one too.
But you, yeah, that
Sounds like it would be good for the
Right. So the first thing I wanted to show is this. This is, if you want to get into Arduino,
yeah, buy that kit.
go on Amazon and buy one of these and just look at the kind of things you can do with it. Like, so this thing, what you gotta realize is for $63, this is your best COVID friend. Because for $63, you're going to get 2 months of entertainment building stuff and figuring out how you can automate your layout.
Yeah, and they come with a disc, which has the sketches and
the
schematics.
Yeah.
And then you can go online. So you can go online and you can figure out how to, you can find stuff, online and actually and put it together. See, it has this thing down on the bottom left. When you get this, there's explanations. This is actually a board where you can model up stuff and you use these pin wires. So this is the board, but you see you get all these resistors and then these jumper wires, and you can just jumper up stuff and build it. And they tell you how to do it, and you'll just learn it. It's not that complicated. And the other thing, so that was one I want to show you. This is the other, this is Model Railroad Control Systems, and he has a thing called CP node. And so what CP node is this is CMRI done with Arduino. So, this is the base unit. And then he has, I think I clicked the right thing. And then he has an expander. And with that, I have to stop because my phone is ringing and it's my better half.
Okay, there's two guys out on, if you go to MRH, one of our sponsors, so go to modelrailroadhobbies.com and look for Jeff Bunza, but he uses French. It's a Geoff, Jeff Bunza, and Professor Kleiser. And I don't know how to spell his name, but these guys are, and from there you go on and on and on. You don't have to learn how to program. Think of this as not as programming, but as instructions. Don't think about schematics, think about wiring diagrams. If you can connect wires together to do your model trains, you can do this. It's that simple because you don't worry about what somebody else is doing or trying to learn how to program it. You just want to copy, yeah, like that. Clark's holding up something nice blinky light program. It's all very simple. This board was designed, if I get myself, the original for this board was designed for college kids who had never touched programming or electronics before. Nowadays, everybody in high school knows all about this stuff. They know more than I do.
Yeah, it's true.
My grandkids do that.
Yeah.
And they're 5.
That's when this was designed, back in the 70s. Okay? That's why it's got that big chip on it right there instead of a little square soldered to the surface. It's that old of a design, and it still works fine, and it's very simple. Probably, here, I'll share something real quick.
Let me ask you this. So what I hear you saying is the only wires that you attach to this are input wires and output wires.
That's right.
And the card that you talk about is what Clark calls the sketches or the computer program that somebody else has written that says this is how you turn lights on, this is how you stop lights.
So Jim, what you do is you can get sketches off the internet and you can just use them directly, or you can modify them if you want to do something differently. But a sketch is just another name for a program. Right. It's just not designed to scare people, but it's just a very simple little program. And then what you do is you use a little application on your PC or your Mac and you put it on the memory card, and then you plug it into the Arduino. It just does what you told it to. So if you tell it, I want you to take pin 1 and turn it on for 15 seconds and then turn it off, and wait 30 seconds and then turn it on again for 15 seconds and turn it off. And then you say, I want pin 2 on a different cycle, and you write the program to do those things. When you run it, it just does the outputs based on what you said.
Yeah. So all I've got to do is plug the lights in to the inputs, plug the lights in to the ground, and put the card in that somebody else has written the computer program for, and I'm in operation.
Right. You actually plug the lights in, and it will configure them as outputs. So an output is from the computer to the light. An input is from the real world back to the computer. So it's always, when you use the word input and output, you always have to think that you're a computer. An input is somebody telling you to do something as the computer. An output is you telling the world to do something for you.
So what is maybe I'm confused here again. I understand what the card is now. That's the computer program somebody else has written.
Right.
And I understand what the output is. That's the light that I want to flash.
Right.
Is that right?
Right, exactly.
All right, and I got 2 wires for that. So
you got the output wire.
Wait. So one wire I put up here in this output strip, and the other wire I put down here where it says ground.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay. What other wire what wire other than those 2 do I put into the Arduino?
Power. Just
Where do where hold it? What power is that? The battery or the 12 volt?
7 volts. You don't want to go 12 volts or higher because it runs on 5. So if you've got this, see the little connector right there? That's plug in the wall wart. Okay.
But wait a minute. So I put 2 wires from my transformer. Where do those wires go? That's the input, right?
No, you wouldn't want to use a transformer. Use a wall wart.
Whatever I use for power, TC.
Right.
I call it a transformer. Whatever it is. Where do I put those wires? 2 wires coming out of my transformer.
You got to put a barrel jack on the end of it and plug it into there.
I have no idea where a barrel jack.
Can you stop sharing?
Yeah.
So we can see you and then pin you larger, because the sharing is
Oh, I
go
didn't know
ahead and pin.
sharing's still on.
Yeah.
Okay, so the barrel jack. Do we have a picture of a barrel jack? Somebody have one real handy. I'll look one up.
Just hold it up.
Just hold it up.
Yeah.
We can see it.
Well, he doesn't know what a barrel jack is, so I want to.
If you look at the back of your modem or router, you'll see a barrel jack.
I have,
connector
excuse
on
me,
it.
I have a demo unit in front of me, and I don't know if I can figure out, but it has a barrel jack and a positive source. So if I could share my screen and turn
There's
off
the barrel right there, you guys.
Okay, you got one.
Okay, who showed one? Because I didn't see.
Okay, I've
Yeah,
got
that's a
one
barrel jack.
here that might be helpful. If I'm gosh, I'm not sure exactly how to.
So Carl's showing one. It's that round plug on a PC. See, look at him. He's showing it. Carl is showing it. Clark, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And so there's a barrel jack connector on one of these things. You plug it in.
And the other end of that cable you plugged in is a wall wart.
Yep. And the best is to use 9 volts because it makes the 5 volts internally and regulates it. That's why it overloads with 12 volts, but 5 volts may not be enough.
Now I'm using this one as a detector. So this infrared unit, which is connected to a wire to the Arduino unit, and the LED is actually right on the Arduino. I just plugged it in. You can see it come on. As soon as the train passes over this sensor, guess what happens?
And he's just holding his finger over it to make it.
That's all I'm doing. And I mean, that's as simple as it gets. Now you don't even need
a sketch hardly for that one.
No, it's pretty simple. Even I figured that one out.
There's an analogy in the computer called Hello World.
Yeah.
It's 3 lines of code.
Blinky.
Line, first line says print the next line. The next line says stop. And so you got 3 lines. One says print the next line. One says hello world. The next line says stop. That's it. And basically that's the same thing you're doing with this. You've got one line that says read the sensor. Next line says if the sensor goes off or on, whatever it's set to, turn on the LED. And the next one says if it changes again, turn off the LED. 3 lines of code and you're done.
Yeah.
It's very, very simple. And you don't, I'm trying to think of it. I've seen it. I do not own it, but there is a program out there that it doesn't run on Mac, so I don't have it anymore. But basically you do everything in like you would writing a letter. Jim, you don't even have to program or download somebody else's program. It all just works off regular text, and it converts and makes the program for you. You tell I want the saloon light to turn on. You just got to tell it what channel the saloon's on, and it knows to do that, and it just writes it all for you.
Oh, okay.
And some of these cards, you don't even need the little card for them. Like this one here, mine, you go on the back of it, there's no input card because it's got extra memory on the inside, but this is a clone.
So really, for an Arduino, all I need is a battery power. And if I want lights on it, I need the LEDs. And then I've got to have a card that somebody has written the sketch for that I plug into it. That's all I have to do.
Sometimes you use a card, sometimes you don't. But yeah, basically you convert, you write the sketch out so it ends up on here. Either on a card you plug in or directly on it like mine does.
Directly on it would be easy for Jim just to start off with. You don't need a
right.
card.
See this little connector on the end, the white one? That's regular USB connector, right? Like your printer. So you just use a printer cable and plug it in here and plug the other into your printer like you do for a printer and say, and your printer will come up and say, that's a microcontroller. And you say, okay, programming tool, write this to that, boom. And then you can take and put it on your railroad. You don't have to have the USB cable anymore.
I have no idea what you just said. I have no idea what application to model railroading that has.
Jim, could I simplify it just a little bit? I don't know if you can see my screen. I don't know if I have to share.
No,
it's looking fine.
All right. Yep. This is a demo I put together for Boy Scout Merit Badge.
Okay.
And I'm going to start with just the components. This, if you can see it, is the Arduino board. This happens to be a slightly different one. It's called a Mega. It's got more holes. Okay, you see a wire. I don't know if you can pick it up right here in the text. This says GND. That is a ground that goes to all of the LEDs. I've got all my LED wires connected through to ground, and I go to the board and I put a little tiny pin this size, little micro miniature thing, and I put that in the slot that says ground. And all it is I put a little piece of resistor end on it, so I've got something easy to handle. So all my grounds are connected to the same one, and this is directly to the LEDs because the voltage out is low enough that you don't need a whole pile of resistors.
Got it.
The beauty of this stuff. So LEDs work fine on the 4.5, 5 volts that the Arduino puts out. Okay, each individual light, and in this case, I've got fire truck headlights, I've got flashers, I've got ladder truck, et cetera, et cetera. I've got all these little lights that happen to be mounted, and they're all like on a long, thin wire, very lightweight, like wire wrap, 30 gauge wire. and those go to the other side of the LEDs. Okay, these are going to be mighty tiny. They're called nano LEDs. They're real tiny things. Usually you see them in computers, but you can buy them with leads already on them. They're real small LEDs. So you have the ground to one side, you have the individual. You'll notice these lights all go to individual holes. These sockets are the outputs. That puts 5 volts out to the light, but it's to individual lights because I want each light to operate independently. Like if you want to put a headlights on, I only want to put the 2 headlights on, or the flasher, I want it to go on and off. But so the ground is always to one side. The plus side goes to an individual socket called an output. And that's all these dinky little holes here that get 1 wire apiece. They referred to a barrel jack, which is just a way of plugging in. It's like the old a phonograph socket, or for a microphone, where you had 2 leads, you had an in and an out. You plugged your microphone in to your amp, and it brought the signal in. That's all this does. A barrel jack is just 2, a plus and a minus, if you will. It's 2 sides of the circuit. In my case, yeah, you can go to a transformer, but an Arduino can accept a 9-volt input. They operate, if you go in through the barrel jack, 9 to 12 volts is fine.
Got it.
So what you do is you apply 9 volts from plain old battery. That's a battery case. When I apply 9 volts, it goes to the program. And I don't know how much this is going to show properly, but
I see it. I see it.
okay.
I understand
so
what
I'm running different lights, and you can take it a step further, so you can see all the lights running, and they're running independently. I've got emergency flashers, all that kind of things going on, and all that activity lives on, in this case, a chip. Someone referred to the rectangular chip, which lives on the board right here. You see that little tiny, smaller than a dime chip, dead center is that's the chip that used to be the long one there. So that lives.
Mine's got the long ones. Yours has got the little square
long
ones.
ones. This is the newer ones. It's got a little more capability, but that hasn't changed much. Now this board, I believe, cost me the princely sum of $9. And since then, I've bought a lot more for a lot less. But that's all it is. Its power goes in, you program it, and you program it from your computer just by copying stuff off the internet. That goes through this little hole here. You get a little cable to plug it in with. And that's all there is to the Arduino. And we'll be covering that a little more coming in February. Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it. I was just talking about what it is all I wanted to really touch on tonight, not how to use it, because everybody says, what is an Arduino? To really get into how to use it is a much longer conversation.
2 or 3 shows worth.
Yeah, I could make several all-night shows about
for sure.
Because so for 15 minutes, I wasn't going to get into that nest, but we did.
I'm sorry, it's my fault, I guess, because you'd lost me totally. I had no idea.
Yeah, I just wanted to explain to everybody that this is a little microcontroller that you can program to do whatever you want. And there's
and the really scary thing is it has more compute power than the Apollo space mission.
Yes, this has more computer power in this little chip right
I mean,
here than the first computers that guided all of those shells the Navy was firing in World War II.
yeah.
Or the bombs the Army was dropping. I mean, a little bitty thing. And this old board here, the new one, if you can see, if you can see that long chip on there, make a square off of one end. And that's the modern chips. And they're like many times more powerful. But the nicest thing about this is, unlike a lot of other things, everything will still talk to each other unless you get really way more complicated than we care about. Okay? They use bigger boards, but basically that little chip can run a petrochemical refinery all by itself. It's that powerful, and the new ones can do even more, but we don't go anywhere near that on our little model layouts. So, you know, but whereas this, that's an actual computer with keyboard inputs and video outputs and it's much more complicated than we need to control a few lights. Although I am going to get into how to use this as JMRI, but that's another story, another month. And that's also already all written. All you got to do is download it, put it on the little card, plug the little card in, and now your Raspberry Pi is a complete computer that runs, all your whole freaking railroad if you want. It's computers are amazing at the little stuff, but it's hard to translate, Jim, sometimes to those of you who aren't familiar. That's why you ask me so many questions. And why tonight I just wanted to get in. This is an Arduino. This is the little thing we're going to be talking about for several months. And at the end, yes, you'll understand how to use it, and how to make it do what you want. But that's a whole nother conversation that could take several nights. Which I don't think we want to talk about just Arduinos, do we, Jim?
No.
I think we can safely say we went down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, and I guess what I come away from this feeling, and I could be crazy, and I appreciate what other people feel about this. For a model railroader, I think this has got to be simplified before this is going to become common usage in model railroading.
Yes, that's why I talked about that program that you just type a letter and it does all the translating for you. Because a lot of this is coming out, like these boards were designed for robots and things like that. People that do much more complicated than what we care about.
And so what I think though, I think it's going to have to be almost like a boxcar. It's got to have an Arduino. It's got to have the sketch on the card. It's got to have the bulbs. It's got to have the 9-volt battery if you want to buy it that way. It's got to have the bits and pieces you need in order to operate that stoplight before this is going to be common usage in model railroading. I could be crazy about that. What do you guys think?
You're both right and wrong. I think it has to be simplified to the point to where I can buy or download something on my computer and put it on that little card, and it's no more complicated than wiring up your control panel. You got a bunch of switches, and instead you got the Arduino. And you just got to be able to say, I want this to do this. I want like the guy's talking about with the more expensive program running his model railroad with his computer. You just point and click, drag this in and drag that in, and boom, it works. That I haven't found yet.
I don't think that that's out. I don't think that that's out there. I think this is why this is kind of, to a lot of people like me, I guess, voodoo science. I understand totally what I've been told about it. I understand the input, output. I understand the light and the ground, all of that. I understand all of that. I understand the sketch that Clark was talking about. That's the computer program. I understand that. I cannot visualize the capabilities that I can use the technology for. Does that make sense to you? I don't, I guess, understand the technology itself well enough to know, besides blinking lights and stop signs and raising flags and so forth, I don't visualize what I can use this for in my hobby. I don't know how else to put it.
Can I interject for a second, Jim, to show, because I'm very computer savvy, okay, but I'm also big into model trains, and I used to be a member of the Bay Ridge Model Railroad Club, which was an outside third rail running club. They used old style latching relays and stuff like that, the old style electrical, not electronics, but electrical,
yeah,
right, to run their trains. So this is like taking all of those old style electrical pieces, like latching relays and stuff like that, and merging into one small board to go ahead and run things. Now, with these Arduino and Raspberry Pis, you can not only do all of that and then some. So let's say you have 3 or 4 engines running at one time, okay, on different areas of a larger layout. It can not only provide lighting for the layout or lighting for a building, it can also let you know track occupancy detection. It can also stop a train or using signal control to stop a train if there's going to be a possible collision. So let's say you have one train following another, and the one train is stopped dropping a car off in the siding, and another train is behind it. And you can't pay attention to that because you're doing something else that got distracted for some reason. The signal would send the track signal would send a signal to the Arduino or Raspberry Pi that there's a track occupancy by that first train, which would then in turn stop the second train from colliding with it. Also, with a point-to-point operation like some guys run, myself will be included in that, that where it could stop the train before it reaches the actual end of the track and going off the layout, especially if you're running dead rail trains, because dead rail does not rely on track power. It relies on battery power, internal battery power. So you can literally, and I've done this and I made a video on it, running a locomotive literally across a wood floor. And you want to be able to control that to keep from going off the layout, because a $2,000 locomotive going off the end of a layout 3-4 feet to the floor is a bad thing in everybody's book. And that Arduino will prevent that from happening if you set it up or the Raspberry Pi. With the Arduino, it's not programmed. The Raspberry Pi uses a programming language, whereas the Arduino is a pass-through for commands. You're telling it to do something at a preset, but it passes through the information rather than programmed information like the Raspberry Pi. That's the difference between the two.
So let me ask you a question then. The things that you talked about doing, the avoidance of collisions and all of that, plus the running of the lights, plus the signals, all of that. One Arduino can do all of that.
One Arduino can run a bunch of signals, literally a bunch. A Raspberry Pi could run an entire signal network on one entire section or subdivision, or even a layout.
It's just a question of how many plugs you can put into it.
Yes.
Right. You can do more with a Mega than you can with an Uno, which can do more than a Nano. Because I got smaller as I went along. And the smaller you get, there's smaller board. Well, there's only so much real estate on the board, so many pins. But that's like why I was talking about. One guy took an Arduino, and he took a different daughter board than this one, but it had a bunch of sensor outputs on it. And so he had his whole layout, night, day, night, all the lights coming off and on. And he did that all with one of these. It's a layout fit in a barn. It was huge.
You see that going blank on your hand.
Oh, yeah. It's
the background screen that's actually covering the visualization of the board.
Yeah, and if I turn off my background, the glare would just wash me out,
Yep.
unfortunately. Let's go somewhere. Some people have said that you do all this computerization, you're just sitting around in one place running your layout. Not necessarily the only use for it. No, let's say you're running along, you're following your train, and you want to go stop at this station, okay? So you're going to throw a turnout. The Arduino can be set up to say, you push the button to throw the turnout doesn't move because there's an obstruction. Maybe there's another train too close, or maybe something has fallen in the track, and it gives you a red indication that you can't go through there because the turnout isn't right. You don't have to get over there and look down and try to peer that, no, that turnout didn't throw because you know it didn't throw. So you don't have to, in a walk around layout, a lot of the stuff that you want to be able to do, let's see, I haven't seen this done yet, but it is within the capabilities. You want to throw an uncoupling, okay? So you pull the string or press the switch or whatever you need for the magnet. But the two cars aren't quite lined up right. They won't work. Well, maybe you can't see that real good, but the Arduino sensors can. And they'll say, you're not centered. You need to move this way or that way. Think of it as reading a level, the bubble on a level. Okay, it moves this way or that way. When it gets centered, it's right between those two marks.
Yeah.
And now the magnet throws and you uncouple. And you don't have to do any peering or shine a flashlight or whatever. You just move it till it works. Those sensors can be built in, and one Arduino, shoot, a whole yard, a small layout, you could have all those sensors and all those magnet controls or, little yellow lights or whatever you want to use.
Put it quite simply, I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir, Mr. Carr, but to put it quite simply, imagine being able to run your trains and you have to get up and use the bathroom, or get a drink, or tend to one of your misses, and you have to do that now. You can set the Arduino or the Raspberry Pi to do that, to watch your trains and run them for you for the couple of minutes you have to tend to, whatever business you have to tend to, and then come back and decommission it or set it offline to set it to manual, So
Gotcha.
To me, it provides a means to do that, as well.
Very useful if you've got an open house and you have to go to the head.
Yep.
You just set it to basically autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
You turn the autopilot on, the trains keep running, you come back, you turn the autopilot off and go back to walk around control like and talking to your guest.
I just wanted to say that I have the same perspective a little bit as Jim does, that it's a little bit intimidating if you don't know it. And I equate it to like our NCE and our Digitrack systems. If you pull the pretty plastic shell off, it's computer, it's wiring inside, and that sort of thing. What the pretty plastic shell does for us, it tells us to press here, press here. So coming into this and trying to learn this, it is a little bit intimidating because you don't have that pretty plastic shell to guide you, and you need somebody to guide you through this.
Right. I don't think for model trains, for robots, there's more of those, as you say, pretty plastic shells, pre-designed how to do this. It's all, 3 years old, 4 years old for model trains to use these things? Very much at all. And so a lot of that isn't there yet. And so Jim's right. For a lot of people, it's going to have to be, simplify is the wrong word. The user interface has to get down to a level that's understandable to somebody who doesn't know what the difference between a computer chip and a microcontroller and doesn't really care.
There's an old saying with computer guys like us I learned back in the day. It's called garbage in, garbage out. All right. A computer will only do what you tell it to. And you have to, if you don't know it, it's not going to do what you want it to. But it's the 18 inches from the keyboard that will actually can make or break how well a computer works of any kind. Doesn't matter how small or how big it is.
The keyboard, yes.
It's literally the 18 inches away from the keyboard that dictates how well the computer works.
Go ahead. You're right.
You know, I'm sorry if I'm interrupting.
I got a story that illustrates this perfectly.
But
I did tech support for years. Okay,
Yep.
pick up the phone, answer the guy's questions.
We used to say like ID 10T error, you know.
Yeah, right. Well, this phone call was a little old lady. She was 80 something years old. Now this 20, 30 years ago, she's probably dead by now or breaking records, one of the two. She said, my foot pedal doesn't work. Jim's grinning because he knows what I'm talking about. If you've never worked in an old style sewing machine, you don't know what a foot pedal is.
Yeah, I do. I know.
She didn't know what a computer was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so for her, she took the mouse, put it on the floor, and thought she'd press on it and make the computer go. The person who took the call said, "Excuse me, ma'am," put her on mute and died laughing. And then we had another lady in another department. She's about 70 something, but she had built computers most of her life. And so she got on the phone and explained to this lady how to make this thing work. But if you're not familiar, as I said to Jim before, if this isn't something you know about, I'm talking right over your head.
But this is why model railroaders should not explain to model railroaders.
Mr. Kello, if I may, if
Yeah.
you want any help explaining or learning about how to use these devices, please ask me or like John Partridge or some of the other guys. I'd be more than happy to, because I know a bit about these and I can help you as much as I can. In emails or messages, doesn't matter. Just please ask, you know. I'm more than happy to help.
Give me or put up for everyone your contact information. I will definitely call you, because I know this stuff, but I don't necessarily explain it well to someone like Jim who has no clue what I'm talking about.
Yep.
That's why you need an instructor. And I go back to this guy, Phil McWhorter, who was a high school teacher, and you walk through walk through his tutorials. He will take you from knowing absolutely nothing to building a robotic piece. But his first 3 or 4 little clinics that he does answers most questions for model railroaders. And it's so simple. And then the number one thing, he explains it. He explains everything, and not in terms like we do. Like, you know, I can talk about repairing brass engines till the cows come home and people are going to get googly eye, because especially beginners. I worked in lots of stores. I have done hundreds of seminars to beginner people, like, you know, okay, we're going to build this kit. And the guy says, well, how do I even open the box? So you have to understand that you got to talk at the lowest denominator. And a lot of us model railroaders aren't good at that, because we think everybody should be at our level. So go to this guy, Phil McWhorter. You'll learn everything you ever needed to know about Arduinos in a very simplified manner.
And Clark, what you're saying is exactly, I agree with it 100%. And part of the problem with model railroaders is they're not like I am. I'm not embarrassed when I ask a question. I mean, it doesn't bother me that I don't know this stuff. If I appear dumb, so be it. If I get the answer that helps me become a better model railroader, that's what I'm after.
And that's why that instructor or the teacher has to understand that. When you start off, you know, even tonight, like just showing that mass of googly wires, it makes no sense to people. You have to start at zero. And when I learned it, this fellow who was like an engineer, he said to me, don't listen to me, because I'm not going to get you to the point where you need to go. Watch this video. There was another one called Drone Bot, and he is another really good guy. And you watch 3 or 4 of their videos and buy the little set. I think one of the guys said, buy the little Arduino set for $36 even. And just follow along. You can stop it. You can plug in the thing. You can stop it, plug in the thing. And all of a sudden the blinking light comes on. You go, no shit, look what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, then you can start to expand. But at least it's the same thing as people. I mean, I get so frustrated with people who say, oh, well, you're going to buy a model railroad and you're going to put down the ready to run track. There was no such thing as ready to run track, people. You have to tune the turnouts. You have to, but people don't know that. And they get frustrated, or they buy the $1.98 engine and they're banging on the table to get it to run. And people have to understand that they have to start at the beginning, and it doesn't matter what it is. That's why I'm a little afraid for that first guest with his hobby shop. I don't think he has enough skills to pull that off.
Well, hopefully he will.
Well,
Well, he's got the
my bet is no.
Do any of you guys live out west by Nevada?
I live in Arizona.
All right. Well, do you know that large solar array that's built in a circle?
Yeah, the solar tower. Yeah.
Yeah. My daughter's father-in-law, who's a friend of mine, he lives 20 minutes away from me, was one of the lead engineers on that project. Okay.
Okay.
And he was explaining to me how that was done. And yet he looks at my model trains and he's like, how the hell did you do that? And he's an engineer by trade. Okay.
Well, yeah. I knew a guy at NASA.
So we each have our own specialties. You know? My
was
ex-sister-in-law, she worked for
rough.
DuPont and NASA. You know, she's a Mensa. And she's literally a genius, my ex-sister-in-law. You know, me, I'm just the next subway motorman, you know? And they look at me and they're like, how the hell do you do that? You know, and I'm like, I could take the really technical approach, or I could take the simple approach that is somebody who is not in that field. If you take the technical approach, to me, that's the difference between a teacher and somebody who has a different aspect. A teacher can break down something into an easily digestible and understandable way or manner that almost anyone can understand.
That's correct.
No matter how technical it is.
Let me tell you where I'm coming from, guys. There are tremendous numbers of model railroaders out there that do not have the ability to sit in front of other model railroaders like I did tonight and ask the kind of questions that I asked, that appeared to be the dumbest person in the room. They will not ask the question. So if the material being presented by the presenter, as talented as they are, if they don't absorb it, chances are they will never ask a question of it. I hear that all the time. People tell me that that part of the reason I write the articles, part of the reason I started these shows is to try to get people to understand that asking a dumb question, there aren't any dumb questions. Nope. If you get an answer that helps you in your modeling. If that's the benefit of asking the question. So I ask the dumb questions maybe, but it's because other people may want to ask the same question, but they're not going to. So if it takes me being the dumb one in the class, I got no problem with that, because I am the dumb one in the class. I don't know this stuff.
And I may not be the best presenter on all the stuff to get into more detail. I can tell you what is an Arduino, but to answer some of your questions that you were asking me tonight might be
what you need to do, TC, is get the people that can do it and bring them in and introduce them as part of your package, your program, so that what comes out of your presentations, whether you do it or your guest does it, is something that everybody asks questions about, everybody benefit, and it gets out there. Because again, I'll tell you, unless we can figure out an easier way to explain the technology that is available to model railroaders like me, and I think I represent a lot of people in this thinking, going into Arduinos and Raspberries is a separate hobby. Going into 3D printing is a separate hobby. I am a model railroad builder. That's my hobby. If Arduinos can help me, great. If it's a separate hobby from what I'm interested in, that I'm turned off on the front end. Well, I think most model railroaders can benefit from this technology.
Well,
So,
yeah, think about, getting away from, you said you use diodes and so forth to operate your trains, to make them reverse.
yes, yep.
Okay. The Arduino can do that without that, because you may not understand this. Some of the others might. You talk to some kids today and talk to them about reversing stuff with diodes and relays, and their eyes glaze over.
Yeah.
They
Like
don't
you mentioned an
understand.
Arduino or a Raspberry Pi, they're on the money. They know it.
Yeah, they know all that. They can program it probably better than me.
But I got news. They're not model railroaders. The model railroader of today, I think, is basically a middle-aged guy who's married, who has security in his job, in his home, who has some free money and some free time. That is the model railroader. That is the market for this knowledge that we're trying to pass on, it seems to me. It's not the high school kid. He's not the model railroader of today.
I'm not talking about high school kids. I'm talking about people in their 30s who have never seen discrete components. They don't even know what we're talking about. Yeah. So you talk to them about analog operation of a train, and they don't understand what you're talking about.
And I don't think they're model railroaders either, TC. I think the model railroader of today, I hate to say this, I may be crazy, but everything that I see tells me that they're older than that. They're mid-40s is what I think the minimum age of model railroader is today.
No, okay, our experience is different, because I've seen teenagers and 20 and 30 years old as the younger age of the hobby.
I have two, but not the majority, TC. The bulk of the hobby is not in those age groups, I don't think. I'm not saying that nobody in those age groups is a model railroader, but I'm saying that the audience of model railroading is not in that age group. That's all I'm saying.
That needs a change, because if this hobby is to survive, we need to do the same type of thinking that, believe it or not, the tobacco companies had success with us over a 70-year period, because they always marketed to a younger segment, because they know that the younger they get them hooked, the longer they're hooked on tobacco. We need to take the same approach to model trains that the tobacco companies did.
They are out there. They are out.
But that is a different program than the one I think we're trying to do here.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking to model railroaders, not hopeful model railroaders, not the model railroaders of the future, not the sons and daughters of the model railroaders.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to get model railroaders information. Today's model railroader, not the future, today's model railroader. And trying to help that model railroader improve their model building and their modeling capability. That's what I think these programs are all about. Now,
well,
do we need kids to come into model railroading? No question about it. But that's a totally different, that's a totally different situation than what I think, at least from my mind, what I want these programs to be.
Well, on that, okay, but to me, I think the minimum age of modelers, as you're saying, is not in their 40s and 50s, they're in their 30s. Because unlike what you and I experienced, the 30 and 40-year-old and maybe even the late 20-year-old has a lot more free time to do a hobby than what you and I did.
And cash.
Society has changed. And people are getting into trains that have never seen a train, and they're much more savvy with computers like this than they are with discrete. You tell them a diode, they say, "What's that?" You start talking about computers, they say, "Oh yeah, I know," but so I think we need to broaden that bottom end a little bit, Jim. Number one, you're also right though, and when you say it's not packaged correctly and it goes right over people's heads, because you've still got guys in their 40s or their 70s. You tell them what a diode is, they know what a diode is, but they don't have a clue about what's the difference between a computer and a microcontroller. All of that stuff came up in the 70s, and if they weren't teenagers in the 70s, they have no clue what we're talking about.
Well, I can tell you at the last 2 or 3 NMRA conventions, there has been a hands-on Arduino class, and I think they paid like $15 for the materials. And there was like 40 people in a class, and you could not get in. There was a waiting group, and guess what? They were all gray-haired guys. There was a few young kids. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I totally agree, but there are kids in the hobby. I'm talking 20-year-olds and up. There are kids in it, but they're prototype guys, and they're looking on their phones. That's how they communicate with people. They're not even on laptops anymore. They're on their phone. They look at it, and if you're not on that phone platform, they skip by you. But they'll go, oh, hey, there's a prototype meet. They're at those prototype meets. They're at other meets. Now, modular groups when it was first starting, there was a lot of modular groups that weren't converting to DCC. My son, who at the time was about 12, I said, hey, are we going to go to the train show tomorrow, for the club? And he goes, are they running DCC or are they running analog? And I go, well, they're using the analog. He says, I'm not going. He says, then I have to wait my turn. He says, what about Dave's club? Because they're all DCC. I said, yeah, they're going to be there. He says, well, then I'll go and play with them, because he says, I can put my train on right away and run trains. And it occurred to me that that's where you're going to get the kids. You're going to get them in with this computer stuff. You're going to get them JMRI stuff. Now, there's lots of older guys who are playing with this stuff. I can tell you, I've been to lots of guys at Holmes, Seth Newman, other guys out in the West Coast. So, to generalize about the hobby a little bit, I think you have to find that niche for where those people are. I think that's where it's to find them. It's not so much that they're not out there.
Is it, as Jim says, 2 different shows?
What do you mean?
In other words, do you have one segment to where they're like Jim say, they just want to run their trains and use this or rotary switches, whatever, as long as they can run their trains, and they're not show people, they want to run their trains?
Well, and the kids, my kid Jeffrey was 12.
Well, that's a different mindset.
Yeah,
that's a whole different show.
But then even when you get to the older kids, I'm talking 20 plus, they are interested. They are builders. They may not build a big layout because they're in university or whatever, but oh my God, I've seen guys build these spectacular cars from scratch. And you go, have you got a layout? And the guy says, no, I don't have room. I don't have time. And where do you go? I go to the prototype modelers meet. That's where my interest is. So
Richard's still here.
So you have to find these people. Paul Thomson will tell you in our modular group. I mean, we had a bunch of young guys, that would come out and run trains. But it was because it was DCC.
I think, Clark, we're getting a little bit away from what Jim's main thrust or point was, really.
Well, no, because I understand what he's saying. He's saying, what is our focus here? Mm-hmm. And he's saying our focus is the general modeler and to help them get better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that's where he would like to take this show. But I'll be very honest. I think some of the guests have to be vetted. I don't think you have to have some credit to be an instructor. And I don't think some of the people who have been on some of the shows have that credibility.
Well, like I said, I think there's a, how do I say this? I think 40 years old is cutting it off too soon as a bottom end, because maybe they're not building layouts, but the younger generation, as you know, once again, 20s and up, are doing more modeling, maybe even than the older guys. A lot of the older guys are still trying to remember the toy trains they had as kids, and it's open the box and plop it down and hope it runs.
Right.
And but the younger generation, Jim, are you familiar at all with the maker community?
The what?
Maker community.
No, never heard of it.
I am. I'm very
Okay.
familiar with it. I'm
Yeah,
very familiar with it.
makers, I think, is the reason it's like Clark is saying these guys are building models or whatever. A lot of the military modelers are coming from that community. These are what you and I would call a tinkerer. They tinker.
Where do you find them? Do they have a
Me.
group?
Oh, they have their own. They're a totally separate entity. Yeah, I play with it too. But I think we're getting a lot more younger kids out of that. And so when they do trains, they're, 20, 30, 40 years old right now. And they're more interested in the actual model itself, not the layout.
Yep.
They might have a diorama or a micro layout. That's becoming, I see a lot of stuff about micro layouts.
Mr. Carr, Mr. Kello, me and Mr. Edward Cady, who lives down the street from me, really, we belong to we belong to a place called TV Cog, Tech Valley Community. All right. It's a maker community, it's called. Okay. And the maker space is in Troy in upstate New York, across the river from me. And it's a large space dedicated to people who come up with ideas from different fields of study or expertise, whether it's 3D printing, computers, or manufacturing, or business, to bring this. Yep, and to bring them together to produce ideas and products that appeal to the people at large or the populace. Okay, and the maker community is represented by people from all different walks of life and everything. But the thing is, we're all tinkerers. All right. And that's the one common thread, whether it's in textiles or electronics or welding. Or
I don't know how we get into I've mentioned it before, I think, but how to get into that and find out the guys in it that are modelers and would be interested in what we do and what we talked about.
Well, it's simple. Our NMRA group, we actually found out about a maker event. They had a large workshop going on. We asked the guys who seemed to be in charge if we can have 15 minutes, and they said sure. We went in and we gave a little presentation on model railroading, and we said, how can you guys blow our minds with model railroading? And a number of those younger guys came to a NMRA event, and they brought us these little projects that they thought about model railroading. And all of a sudden we had that connection. One of the biggest things you cannot do, and this is one of the things that really kills me about some of the NMRA guys, you can't be an old grumpy guy and go, hey, kid, what are you doing? You got to go to them. You got to get involved with them. You got to say, hey, my name's Clark. I'm a model railroad guy. What can you teach me? And they go, oh, well, let me show you this. You have to bridge that gap with these kids. You can't be the grumpy old guy and go, blah, 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 blah. It just isn't going to work. You got to get involved with these younger kids. And
well, a lot of guys were saying it isn't scratch building when you use 3D printing, and it's like, well, okay, I'm not into converting watch gears to sprockets for my model trains. And a lot of these guys, they're no good, really, are not as good with their hands. But
that does not make them any less valuable.
Huh?
That does not make them any less valuable.
Right.
No.
And that's where they will come to you and go, hey, I saw you put that gear on. Now I can draw it and I can do it, but how did you do that? And you show them. And all of a sudden, now there's that cross-pollination between the hobbies. And that's where you're going to pick up the younger crowd.
But not always younger.
No, I totally agree there.
One of the guys at the Columbia Gorge Club, and yes, this was a few years ago, and he was about 70 years old at the time.
Shouldn't talk about Doug that way.
No, not talking about Doug. This guy was an engineer at Intel, so Doug isn't talked about. But yeah, if you want to talk about waterworks and dams, talk to Doug.
or MG restoration.
Okay,
let me try to get back on track just a little bit. I guess what I'm saying is we can't assume that the people that are coming to watch this show and that we're trying to get to come to watch this show are computer savvy. Because I don't think most model railroaders are computer savvy. Maybe I'm wrong.
That's one of the reasons why the NMRA cannot go to a digital magazine.
Therefore, assuming that I'm right in that, then I don't really care what age they are. We can't assume that they're 20-year-old knowledgeable computer people, because in my opinion, regardless of their age, most of them are not. Therefore, therefore, we're really not teaching as much as I guess we're teaching, but we're trying to present technology in such a way, TC, that it is understandable for the model railroader. Now, forget age. The model railroader that I think this program is geared to, that I'm gearing this program to, when I think of what we're doing, when I think of the articles I'm writing, when I think of the people I invite to the train shows, when I think of everything that I'm doing, I am trying to get more people building models in the hobby. And I'm trying to get the knowledge that the older people in the hobby have passed to the next generation before the older people are dead and gone and die with the technical skills that have helped build the hobby to where it is today. That's where I'm coming from. Therefore, the people that I've invited to be on the program, in a lot of cases, they may be considered, quote, average modelers, but they all have a fire in the stomach for model building. And they all have had that experience of building something and sitting back and saying, God, I built that. Look at that model I built. I'm really proud of that. And having that thrill of being able to do that. So they may not be the greatest teachers, Clark, in the world. I don't look for that.
No, I'm not saying that.
I look for people that I think can talk about what they do, regardless of the size of their model railroading, regardless of the scale, regardless of what part of model railroading they really are involved in. If they have that fire, if I sense that they have that fire, if I think that they can pass that knowledge and that desire on to the generation coming along, however old that is, then I'm interested in those people. Most of those people, if you sit down and talk to them privately, they'll say, you know, Jim Keller's the first person that ever picked up a telephone and called me up. Nobody else has called me up and asked to write about me. Nobody else has asked me to come on a show like, who is this guy? How did he find me? Well, I get lucky in a lot of cases. I read a lot. I belong to all the groups that I can find on Facebook. And a lot of people say, have you met so-and-so? And I'm trying to meet so-and-so, the same as I'm trying to meet the people that are here tonight. To me, there's a thrill in finding that guy, like the guy that I introduced everybody to earlier today, that told me I'm a lone wolf. I've got my own model railroad. It's a switching layout. I'm an HO, been HO all my life. I go to the shows around me. I go to the St. Louis major show and so forth. And he said, but you're the first person that I've really talked to about who else I listen to in the hobby, who else I want my model railroad to be like. The manufacturers that I use. No one's asked me these questions before. And to have him come to us now and say, hey, I'd like to be involved in your programming because I think I can lead you to people in the hobby that are really interesting to the model railroad community that in most cases, no one's ever heard of. One of the major comments that I get from my train shows, we never heard of most of these manufacturers. Well, that doesn't surprise me. How are you going to hear about them? Unless they go to a regional show, they're not going to the huge shows. If they're on the East Coast, they don't go to anything in California. If they're in California, chances are they don't go anywhere up east. So you've got all of these regional manufacturers around that unless you live in their region, you never heard of them. Well, the train shows, the virtual train shows that we're doing, we're inviting them. Hey, come and join us. Come talk to the world. The world may not be interested in your product. We can't guarantee that. But at least we can expose you to that world audience. And it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg, so you don't have to worry about being able to afford it. Well, to me, that's the audience that we're dealing with. That's the kind of person that I've been seeking out, trying to bring to the show. When we had the S-Scaler Simmons on, I had never, N-Scaler, I had never seen a layout as detailed in N-Scale as he had. I mean, it was amazing to me. Well, I found him, just luckily, from a friend of mine in California that said, N-Scale, have you met so-and-so? Well, that's how I found it. So there's no magic to this to me, but if we're going to talk subjects, then we got to make sure that we're talking what audience we're talking to. And in computerization, electron, all of the new technology, we're not talking to knowledgeable people, in my opinion.
I think it's a matter of presentation. The trouble I was having tonight, distilling it so you could understand it, although we went a little further afield than what I wanted to do. But that's not as important as the fact that, okay, background. I've got an EDP degree, electronic data processing. I'm dating myself. But my take and angle of approaching this stuff is not the same way as what you're talking about. So I may not be the most wonderful person to present it.
Well, find people that you feel comfortable bringing in to present the part that you don't feel that you're the person that should be doing it, TC. You don't have to do it all yourself.
No, I know. It's just I haven't found those people yet, and other people that I'm looking for. But
you got, but I have offered. I keep saying, anybody need help? Let's ask for the help. I'm asking for help every day out there. I post on my Facebook page this morning that I needed help and what I needed help for and what things that I needed people to be able to do for me. And I got 7 people responding.
Yeah.
It's a question.
I'm not even on Facebook. I can't stand it.
You may have to be, TC, if you're going to reach the community that you're looking to reach. I don't know how else you reach them.
I do everything with email groups. I've got a member on several of them. We can't
Well,
post on them, but
okay. Well,
but
see,
that's how I communicate.
but if you can't post on them,
No,
and
we
you
can't post about this on it. I can ask for help. That's not, I mean, we can't quote advertise, and that's how they don't want us doing new tracks on their groups.
well, but see those groups then. From a promotional standpoint, they don't offer us anything. But from a help standpoint, if that's where you have to go for your help, then yeah, I mean, post on it and ask for help. I don't know any other way to get help.
Well, one thing I'd like to bring on, and I think it's almost ready for prime time, is like I'm talking about taking these two boards and turning it into a DCC control board. You know, that's my control station right there. I'm not buying Digitrax or NCE or anything. I want to build it this way. And like I said, I have an EDP degree, so I got a little more understanding of it. But there's a group of guys doing all the programming, okay? And they've got a whole new system coming out. And I mean, this cost me, I think now it's like $5 to buy these two boards, download their sketch, load it, I'm done. I don't have to do anything else. And that's the advantage, I think, for model railroaders, what I was trying to talk about. This is an Arduino. Forget about how it works and everything else. Just what do you want to do? Look it up. MRH is a great place. There's lots of discussions about this. And you know, copy the sketch or download the sketch, load it on your Arduino, and then you can do the same thing. You don't have to understand the background.
And I don't want to learn it. I don't care about anything like that. I'm a model railroader. I build stuff. I love to build stuff. If this can help me, great. How can it help me? I don't care about the technical stuff about all the other stuff in it and all of that. That's extraneous information for me, a model railroader. And I think most people out there will approach technology from that standpoint. I could be crazy, but that's how I feel.
So, well, and I think there's probably a lot more of that than there is not. What you were going to talk, Dan?
I just wanted to point to, if you listen to Jim on any of these presentations they have, or you go back, if you're going to do a presentation, I suggest anybody listen to him, break it down to his questions. He slows everybody down. He's meticulous. He writes his questions down. He comes back and he stops people and wants you to explain a term. So if you go in with his model and listen to how he's coming to you, I think we can talk to that generation and that group of modelers who are not as savvy at the things that some of us may be. But I've been coming to these things and I'm not a presenter, I'm not great at presenting, but I'm listening to him and I can see where he's coming from and I can break it down from there. I think that we can present to the group that he's asking us to present to, just by listening to him.
Do you think that I'm right or wrong? I mean, I may be crazy. Maybe the group is much more sophisticated than I give them credit for, but I don't see it. People that I talk to, they don't talk to me about it.
I think there's a gap in generations to me. So I think that we run the gamut. When you describe the modeler coming into the hobby, that was me exactly. I'm 48 years old and I'm really getting serious about it now. I'm stable in a stable job. The only thing I don't have is money. So so what makes me want to learn about Arduinos, for instance, and pay more attention to it is because it's supposed to be a cheaper way to go than buying a system where you can commercially. And so from that perspective, but what I see too, from TC's point of view, is it is a little bit younger. So somebody's in the hobby when they're younger, they had some influence, then they get out of it for a while. They've got to settle on their lives. They've got to get that job out of college and that sort of thing. So I see modelers coming in at 29 or 30, seriously, where they've settled, their family has started, they've got room to build, and now they're starting to get a little bit of money. So it does run the gamut, but I think there's definitely a thought difference between generations.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, and I think that's why I'm saying I think there's a younger generation, but they're not building a big layout. They're building a switching layout or a shelf layout or a micro layout, and it's just a place to display their models.
I think it's even more granular too. If you look at the maker community, I look at it as if we're going to get that younger generation or that generation of builders in, we've got to look at a locomotive from the inside out instead of the outside in. We can't worry about road names and rivet counting. I think to go to that generation, we've got to speak to their language of how does it work? How do I make it work? How do I make it run on the layout? Then all the other stuff can come because they're going to be surrounded by it. And then we can saturate them with landscaping stuff and all the other pieces.
Well, yeah, the maker, you talked, Jim, about the pride and accomplishment when you get through with a model. That's one of the biggest driving forces behind the maker community. I automated my blinds or my dumpster or whatever they automated, or I made a little worthless box that entertains my kid, you know, whatever. They did it. They're not doing trains, they're doing something else, but still, it's the pride and accomplishment is also there. And I think we can latch into that with model trains. It's not so much the layout as building individual models.
Dylan? Is Dylan still here?
Yeah.
Dylan, do me a favor. Put up a couple of the pictures that I sent you on my junkyard dog.
Sure. Give me a second. Let me queue them up.
I want to show you this, TC, and the rest of you, and try to make a point here. You saw Bill Davis show you some scratch-built items that he had using some of Dylan's 3D printed parts and so forth.
Right.
This is my scratch-built brass junkyard dog that I'm building. It's just pieces of brass that I've soldered together. To me, when I finish this, it's going to be a beautiful model, as beautiful as I can make it, of that junkyard dog. It doesn't have a single 3D part printed on it. It doesn't have anything except some etched parts of it that I soldered together to try to appear that it's got the louvers in the sides of the hood. Other than that, it's sheet and bar and different kinds of brass that I've cut and soldered together, bent, shaped, so forth. Now, the model that Bill showed you using Dylan's 3D printed parts is a much more accurate representation of the junkyard dog. No question about it. And the way that he built it and everything is absolutely fantastic scratch building. No comparison to the model that I'm building, but this is how I do model railroading. A lot of people, older people, this is their model railroading. Is 3D printing a part of their capability? No. Can they build something like this? Yes.
No.
The generation coming up would never even think about, most of them, 99.9% probably, of trying to build the kind of stuff in brass versus the capability that 3D printing and the other technologies have to offer. It just so happens this is my enjoyment of the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
And what I try to bring to the shows is, yes, let's see how this is built. Let's talk about how this can be improved. Let's talk about this kind of model building. but also let's talk about the new technologies that make it much easier in most cases, a much better looking model in every case than what I'm capable of building using my technology and using the way that I like to build models. So I want to present the 3D printing capabilities, but in such a way that model railroaders actually feel that they understand it and can start using it.
And Jim, your video just cut out.
Yeah, I got 3% left on my battery and I'm out. So I'm sorry guys, but it's bedtime for Jimmy.
Jim, your skill on how to build brass models and all that. I mean, that is something actually I would be actually interested in knowing, because I had to basically give away a brass engine that I've had for decades because I couldn't repair the thing.
Well,
Mr. Katie, gentlemen, if I can interrupt for a second?
Yep.
That's a brass locomotive I started building about 7 years ago from scratch.
Yep.
It's based upon a Bob Heggie model that he did, the late great Bob Heggie, he did when the Crooked Mountain Lines. This is an old
Oh, yeah,
scale.
I remember that. I remember that.
This is an old scale brass box cab locomotive that I started building. I hand cut and hand embossed the rivets in each
Absolutely
section.
gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
And I haven't even finished it yet.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Is that a 4-trucker?
It's going to be a 2-trucker, actually.
Oh, okay. No, I mean the original.
Oh, the original was a 4-trucker, yes. I still have the blueprint. I still have the articles on it.
That was the issue that actually got me into model railroading.
Well, Mr. Katie, you and I live really close. So if you wanted to come over and work with me sometimes, please, you're more than welcome to.
Where exactly are you?
Latham, right on Route 2, Troy Schenectady Road.
All right. Well, actually, right now, I just last year moved to Vermont, so I'm a little bit farther away from you, but not that far.
What part of Vermont?
Arlington.
Okay, I know that's that because I go to Wilmington for a flea market and I go to Bennington sometimes for pizza bagels.
Yeah, you're about an hour and 50 minutes away.
Well, if you ever want to come out this way to hang out and work on work on brass or trains, whatever, please, by all means.
All right.
More than welcome to.
Before Jim leaves us, I think we're seeing the inverse in this discussion, Jim. I'm talking about people who are more savvy with doing 3D or electronics, and you're talking about building it piece by piece from flat brass. And a lot of the guys I know and hang out with don't have a clue how that's done.
I do both.
Well, okay, you're an oddball.
But besides that,
That's true.
they're both mediums.
That's true.
They're both artistic mediums. It doesn't matter one or the other. One's not more beautiful than the other.
Yep.
So his brass model by hand is not less beautiful than a 3D printed model. It's just a different medium, and each generation has different mediums, and they don't understand the other generation's mediums, and we all have to kind of get that communication together.
Yeah, I think that we need to